Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
Assalamu rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum to all viewers. Another perfect storm is here. Just so people understand the gist of this particular stream, it's slightly different to other open forums that you might come across. So most open forums, people come on and they ask questions, and the guests have to respond to the questions, basically. Well, the perfect storm is a little bit different in the way that we ask you the questions. So effectively, you'll come onto the stream, and we'll ask you what you believe and why, and then let's see if it can withstand the storm. So that's basically the format, if you like. You ready, guys?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How are you guys doing? You doing okay, mashallah?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying this every afternoon.
No, sorry, I know. Not a good start. Assalamu alaikum to everyone, basically.
Alhamdulillah.
Oh, someone asked me, am I going live on TikTok tonight? I didn't even think about that. No, not tonight. I need to get one of those stands. Next time, inshallah.
I've been watching, listening and viewing a couple of stories out there. And from a couple of these apostates, basically. And the one thing that always seems to come out is just a complete lack of Islam. They just don't know what Islam is about. And the arguments that they make, I find quite shocking, really, to be honest.
Do you know what I find most shocking about ex-Muslims? Is this idea that they fear for their life. So they have this, they try and put this perception out there that because they've left Islam, everybody wants to kill them. And yet they plaster themselves all over social media. That kind of don't make sense. You'd be hiding, wouldn't you, surely? If you believed that you were going to be hunted and killed for your religion, why would you plaster yourself everywhere?
Yeah, exactly.
Never understood that.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You get a lot of people, particularly in the, maybe if you're in a country where there's death law and order, and there's a chance that someone might take the law into their own hands, which is against Islam anyway. You're not allowed to do that. But if someone were to take the law, and that you'd understand. But these guys are like Australia, America, UK, and you think no one's going to do anything to you anyway, no matter what you do. And I think it's a bit of a sympathy vote in the sense that they know that the Westerners who don't really understand much about the religion have heard about this idea, and that's what they're going to.
That's right.
It'll get them support. It will get them finance. It will get them noticed.
Yeah,
Mela, make it easy, and
No, but Imran. The other thing is that you say the West, but there are a lot of people, for example, even in Pakistan, who are quite open in terms of the fact that they don't believe in Islam.
Yeah.
Now, in Pakistan, you would think that everyone is like nuts, and they would just go and attack. Well, I'm saying from a non-Muslim point of view, a lot of people, they think, oh, you just get
don't diss the Pakistanis, bro. Don't diss the Pakistanis.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying from their point of view, it's like they would expect them to get lynched straight away. But these people are on social media. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes bad things don't happen and people don't act in a really, un-Islamic way. And I say un-Islamic because to just go and kill somebody, to go and hurt somebody in any way whatsoever like that, it is against the Sharia, because the Sharia has a very set out principle and rule of how these things are dealt with. And any type of punishment is the last resort. And it's not something that is, vigilantes can just go out and just do. But I do find it very, very surprising. And I do agree with you, Imran. I think with social media now, I think a lot of people have realized that if you play the victim, like Ayan Hirsi, for example, play the victim, you make up stuff, you lie about stuff. For example, she lied about being in Somalia in the civil war, and then she got caught that actually she was in Kenya. and she lied to the authorities in America so she could get political asylum. I mean, and now she's one of the most popular anti-Islam, speakers out there, and she gets incredible amount of sympathy. People holding her hand and hugging her and saying, "Oh, so you poor thing," But the woman's already clearly shown that she's deceptive and she's lying about stuff. And yet, as long as they agree, as long as they sort of sing their songs, they're okay. They're happy with that. And I just find it really odd, to be honest.
Yeah, I seen another TikTok video the other day, and it was like some kind of ex-Muslim sat there looking miserable in the rain, saying the family had disowned her. She didn't realize, their love was conditional on her being a Muslim and such. And it tries to paint this idea that this is what happens to ex-Muslims, and it may happen. It may happen in cases. And it also happens in reverse, when reverse accept Islam, and the same thing. But what I find bizarre about it all is the idea that Islam prohibits such a thing. So if you've been disowned because you've left Islam, Islam prohibits that. So if you leave Islam, Islam doesn't permit your family to cut ties with you and disown you and say, "You're not my daughter," or anything along these lines. So it's so ironic that they try to play the victim, where Islam is like the hero in this scenario. It stops the idea of cutting the family ties.
Yeah.
I find it amazing. Whereas the other way around, I've had, we've had mainly sisters who accept Islam get ostracized and cut off from their families.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to just say that to you, that there are hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of cases where people accept Islam. They actually start treating their parents honorably and respectfully, even if they hadn't been prior to Islam, because Islam obviously enforces such a thing. It ties in worship of Allah and obedience to your parents, pretty much, obviously not at the same level, but, worshiping Allah, and Allah often mentions, and be obedient to your parents. So it's very important. And yet you find that they're disowned, they're victimized, they're often ridiculed. They struggle to get jobs. Their work colleagues unfriend them. Their friends unfriend them. On Facebook, suddenly they lose 30, 40%, 50% of their friends literally overnight once they realize they've accepted Islam. So nobody's sort of pulling out the violins there. Nobody's sort of feeling sorry for those people. It's like almost those people deserve that. It's quite shocking. Okay, so we've got a couple of people already waiting. Imran, sorry, do you want to get in there before we... I was
just going to say that I personally know of sisters who've converted from other religions. And physically, brothers and father and brothers have got together to literally beat the person to death. They thought they had done that and left them on the street. And this is sort of, obviously not covered in any paint. This is not going to be painted, isn't it? But this is the struggle of the revert. And this is also from a person from a sub-intercontinental background anyway, wasn't a Muslim, became a Muslim. And their family, what we would call probably an honor killing attempt or whatever, that's what they went through,
Yeah.
And I know at least 2 cases personally of sisters going through that sort of thing. So you're absolutely right. We don't hear the other side of it. I'll make it easy and give people sense.
Sure.
Sure. Should we let these guests on then? Let's see. We've got 3 in the back chat. We've got Case. Really? All right. Anyway, let's bring Earth on first. Earth, welcome to the perfect storm. What you got to say? And that was that. Earth. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, man. What's your what do you believe and why?
Actually, I came here to ask a question.
Oh, we're here to ask you questions, my friend.
You want to ask me? Okay, what is the question?
What do you believe to be the truth of the reality of this world, and why?
I'm Muslim. I believe in Islam.
Assalamu alaikum. This is for non-Muslims, this particular stream, just so you guys know. So we're not going to bring a Muslim on and ask him why he's a Muslim, okay? So the clue is in the format. Anonymous artist, welcome to the stream.
Anonymous artist, are you?
You're leaving us with Case here, man. Please say something.
Anonymous artist. You.
I don't know if you're muted. I don't know. Hello. Hello.
They might have logged on and gone for a cup of tea. So if you leave them in the back, and if they
Okay, well, let's get our friend, our good friend, Case on then.
Well, wait. Is there no one else?
Really? Okay.
Hello, Case. You're muted, Case. Can you hear us? Hello, Case. You all right? We can't hear you. I think your microphone is not connected, perhaps, or something's on mute. Try once more. Anonymous artist. Anonymous artist. That's a good start, isn't it, guys?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, anonymous artist.
Hello.
Yeah, hi there.
Alhamdulillah. Hi, yeah, I'd like to talk about a few things, God willing.
You're
I'm
Muslim,
not exactly a Muslim, but I'm sort of into Islam.
Okay.
But there's a few things that are troubling me. One is, well, see, I didn't think this was going to work, actually, because my internet connection's pretty crap. So,
Well, we can hear you quite clearly.
I'm a bit unprepared, but okay, I'll carry on then. Well, from what I really like about Islam is how it can't be changed. It can't be corrupted. It's quite clear in the Quran, from my interpretation, how it's protected, but it can't be like Christianity was with the church. It's been taken over by and corrupted, and the words have changed. The meaning of the words have changed, and the Quran's very explicit in how it says every religion before they've changed the meanings of the words. They've took its words out of context. But over 1,600 years, I'm afraid to say, I think Islam might have picked up a few dogmas. Are you following me?
Yes, we are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Now, there's several things that I don't exactly understand.
Right.
So maybe you could help me. The one, I think...
Anonymous, can you hear us speaking?
Can you hear us? Hello?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Before you go off on a tangent, let me ask you what you believe to be true.
Well, I believe in God. From my own experiences over the last 20 years, say, and I've read the Quran a load of times, and I do believe in it. But
why do you believe in
there's like dogmas that I think modern day Islam has picked up, which I can't believe in because I don't believe they're to be true. I think the easiest one for me to start on might be a bit controversial, but I'll give it a go if you like.
Go ahead.
So just so I understand what you're doing. One second. So we can understand what you're doing, you're going to tell us what you believe is wrong with Islam. Is that right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think it's how Islam deals with a certain problem in this one instance.
Yeah, so what we'll do, you bring your belief to the fore and we'll put it through the storm. All right? So what is this belief that you have that you think Islam is wrong about?
No, this is. I'm sorry. I'm having a. You're breaking up. I did think this might be a problem.
Don't worry, we
my
can hear
internet
you, mate.
connection isn't the best.
We can hear
I can't
you.
really hear you clearly.
We can hear you.
I think once you become a Muslim, your internet connection seems to magically improve drastically. So I think that's one really good, important reason for you to consider.
Well, there you go. It's working. I heard that.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Go on and bring your claim.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, it's basically one word I'm really struggling with, and that's the word intoxicant.
Look, just tell us
Hello?
what you think Islam is wrong about, please.
Well, I believe that it doesn't say, it says clearly about transgressing. And one of the things that is a clear transgression is to ban things that God hasn't banned. Right? Yeah. Now it's clear to me, he's banned alcohol, unquestionably. Yeah. For Muslims anyway, you know, and I agree with that. I can understand why, you know. But in the context I've read, the word intoxicant, it is only ever used in the Quran and Hadith. Haram, when it clearly says all intoxicants are wine or alcohol, which are haram, and all alcohol is haram. So it's only in that context. But other things which are nothing like alcohol, it's a common acceptance in modern Islam that they're prohibited. And the prohibition of certain medicines is wrong. You know, there's no justice. There's when you're denying people God's blessings.
Look, can you just tell
you understand?
Us? I want you to be straight. Tell us what you're talking about. What is banned?
Oh, intoxicant. Intoxicants, to me, to say all intoxicants, like is caffeine an intoxicant? No, that's it affects the part
I think
of the brain
you've misunderstood.
Same as the coca leaf.
You've misunderstood the actual verse. You see the word khamar.
Abbas, before you give him the answers,
Sure.
Let's actually find out what this, because I think, because you're absolutely right, there's a complete lack of understanding of the very basic concepts here. So Anonymous, you've said that you agree that alcohol is banned, yeah? Why do you agree with that? What has led you to that conclusion to start with?
No, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Why do you agree that alcohol is intoxicant and it should be banned?
Alcohol. I stay away from alcohol. I can understand why God would want us to stay away from alcohol. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So which drugs would you like to take?
Well, it's Sorry?
Which drugs do you think you should be allowed to have?
Which drink?
Which drugs?
I couldn't hear, sorry.
Okay, you agree that alcohol should be banned by Islam as it is.
No.
Which drugs do you think should be permitted according to Islam?
Well, I think it's certainly excellent advice to tell people to stay away from it, you know? Definitely, yeah.
No, you're not hearing the question.
Like
I said, which
a lot of
drug
other
should be allowed?
stuff, but
you're not making any sense, mate. Right? You're complaining that Islam prohibits drugs.
Like they're able to take.
Listen, you complaining Islam prohibits drugs as well as alcohol. So I'm asking a very simple question. What do you think Islam got wrong? What has it prohibited through the teachings of our scholars and the Sunnah and all of these things, what has it prohibited that you think is wrong?
Well, all of them. There shouldn't really be a prohibition on anything other than what Allah says.
So heroin is fine.
It wrecks the balance.
Heroin okay?
There's a balance.
Is heroin allowed?
For some people, I wouldn't say it's fine. No, I wouldn't say it's fine, but you cannot deny it is a very useful drug if you're in pain. You know, not necessarily heroin, but derivatives of opium are a very useful drug. And it's up to the people with guidance from Allah that will know when to take it and when not to take it, you know, because it is a very powerful painkiller, and people do experience pain. If it can relieve somebody of pain, then it has to be good.
So just so I understand what you're saying,
to ban the good things.
So what? Just so I understand what you're saying. Just so I understand what you're saying, are you saying morphine is prohibited by Islam?
Sorry?
Are you claiming morphine is prohibited by Islam?
Well, I mean, if you're going to take, I think there's a hadith where Muhammad said, bless him, if you take something and it stops you, it distracts you from praying, for example, then it's bad. It's no good.
Let me rephrase my question.
So if you're taking like a load of heroin, you can't.
Okay.
I think Hamza. I think just keep it very simple. I think just keep it very simple. Just give the explanation, because clearly he's obviously misunderstood. Anonymous artist, if we could know your name, it would be a nicer way to address you. But you've got to appreciate that it's actually very clear in Islam that, that intoxicants are actually forbidden. And the reason why they're forbidden is that, so for example, with alcohol and with any other type of drug that would cause you to do something that you would not normally do. So for example, alcohol, we know, takes away your inhibitions, and as a consequence, you will end up doing things that you would not normally do. So the faculty to reason, the faculty of your mind is altered, and as a consequence, it's made forbidden for you. Now, Allah makes it very clear in the Quran that the sin outstrips the benefit, and this is why Allah has made it forbidden for you. The harms outstrip the benefit. This is why it's haram for you. So this is, the scholars have agreed from day one on this. This is not something that was controversial. This was not something that, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay. So anything that alters one's mind, facilitating an action or behavior that you would not normally do if you were not on that particular drug or intoxicant, this would be considered haram, forbidden. Now, the issue is, and this is more of a fiqh issue, so I don't want to get sucked into that. However, there is an opinion that if there are certain derivatives of these intoxicants whereby there is no other cure that you can find. So, for example, if there's a particular drug for your heart and there is not a replacement for that drug, and that particular drug that the doctor prescribes you has a very, very small amount of alcohol in there, then this would not be considered to be something that would be a sin on your part. So out of an extreme desperation and a limitation of alternative, you could take that. Now, so it's very, very clear. There's no real ambiguity when it comes to intoxicants. Anything that affects your rationale, your mind, takes away your inhibitions, whereby you lose control or you do something that you would not normally do, or takes you away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because you're completely out of it, that would be considered as forbidden. And this is not something, as I say, it's not controversial. It's not, there's not hundreds of opinions on this. It's a fairly easy consensus that's widely accepted.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, but the thing is, the Quran does clearly state alcohol is forbidden, but other things like there's good in most of the plants that God's given us. Yeah, he's given us a plant to sort out nearly all our problems, and to ban them is against Allah, as far as I can say. You know, it's someone guided by God would surely know not to take heroin. You know, only if they had really bad toothache, for example, or whatever pain they were in, it can relieve their pain. But I mean, I'm perfectly honest with you. One drug or plant is cannabis. It's a wonderful plant, and it can solve a lot of the world's problems medically, like autoimmunity. But I mean, the science, because of its prohibition, has only just in the last few years been discovered that the equilibrium it causes, the homeostasis in our bodies, it's a blessing.
So just so I
understand, and the herbs and the trees bow down to Allah.
Get in there.
And there's an equilibrium, which can mean a balance in the universe.
Yeah, the truth has just come out now, though. The truth has just come out now. I think you're smoking right now, to be honest.
You know, the verse, the beneficent.
Yeah. So you've come on. You've come on.
The blessings.
No, I know, but you've come on.
It says that there's a balance, which is justice, and in the universe, you should not meddle with.
Look.
You should not deny anybody Allah's blessing.
Can you hear me?
And some people will take
not able to hear very well
too much of any drug.
Okay,
but
just so I understand,
how do you deal with
things in perspective. Just
surely with compassion and mercy.
Right. Just so I can put things in perspective.
And not aggression and thieving. Because once you say something's illegal,
Anonymous, can you hear us?
That off you.
Can you hear us, Anonymous?
Because you're not allowed it.
Can't even mute him. No, we mute him. All right. Just so I understand, now I get it. You've come on here to tell us cannabis is a fantastic drug and everyone should smoke it. Is that what you're saying? Is that really it? And you're upset that Islam doesn't allow it? Now he's muted. The irony.
I think let Imran get in there. Imran, give the explanation. I think Anonymous has got bad connection. It might be a good idea to just give your explanation, Imran.
Yeah, I think we'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, brother. So I'm glad you're looking into Islam, and I'm glad you're reading the Quran. But what I would suggest you do is actually read it, and understand it from the Muslim perspective, in the sense that there are scholars that have spoken about these. There's lots of things we call tafsirs, which are sort of explanations of what the Quran means.
You're probably the third Muslims I've ever spoken to. I've been studying Islam for 2 years. I've pretty much decided I submit to Allah, for 2 years now. But there's no Muslims around here to talk to. But mashallah, I did actually speak to an imam about a year ago now, and he couldn't dispute anything I said. He actually agreed with what I said on this subject, which gave me a lot of faith.
So I think Anonymous, just one second.
An imam that understands
Anonymous, just hold for 1 second. I think there's a bit of a delay, just hear me out, for a second, okay? So just want to give you, basically, I don't accept the idea that an imam would have told you that it's okay to smoke weed, okay? That's basically a factual statement as far as I'm concerned, yeah? And there's simple reasons for this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Quran says, clarify it for you. And there's a hadith that also is very interesting that you should understand. And then I'll give you a medical perspective on some of these things, okay? So in terms of the Quran specifically talks about khamar, which is intoxicants. Now, the vast majority of the people who've looked at this say this refers to any intoxicant, okay? There have been one or two scholars in the past who took it very literally, because khamar refers to the pressed grape wine, yeah. But these are very minority fringe views. But so the vast majority is that this is to do with any intoxicant. And we have other statements from the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he says, whatever intoxicates in large quantities, then a small quantity of it is forbidden. So that's a principle that we apply when we come to things like medicines and these things or whatever. But actually in medicine, there's another exemption specifically given that obviously if you're treating a condition and this is the treatment, then the treatment is allowed. And there's very few things that would not be allowed if there's a requirement for that treatment to happen. And that's, you can go to any scholar who would be able to explain that to you. I'm just giving you...
I don't. Sorry, I'm really struggling to hear you. But I think I missed your point there. Where in the Quran it said what you just said? Because I can only find the word alcohol in there.
So
I can only find it in the context of alcohol. I cannot find it in any other context.
Anonymous. The word alcohol is not in the Quran.
In fact, what? Sorry, I couldn't hear that. But what is the word for
might be a good idea, Imran? What might be a good idea? Anonymous, sorry, if you can hear me, just be silent for a while if you don't mind. What Imran will do is Imran will give you the answer, and then you can go back to the stream and you can hear the answer in full. If you don't mind, brother, please don't interrupt. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get through this question easily. Let Imran finish his answer. Even if you can't hear properly, you can go back to YouTube, watch the stream, and you'll get the full answer with clarity, hopefully then. Is that okay?
No, it's a real shame. I'd really love to have this conversation when I could hear what you were saying, but unfortunately I can't.
That's okay. That's okay. So just come back.
Maybe another time, mate. I cannot hear what you're saying.
All right. Take care, mate.
But, well, thank you, Alhamdulillah, for having me on. Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you to come on.
Please email us if you don't mind. Can somebody just give him our email address in the private chat? Hopefully he reads the email. So Anonymous, if you can hear me, just take our email address and email us, and then we'll try to have a conversation maybe over the phone if your internet doesn't allow. Is that okay?
So I just wanted to mention one thing, because there is this concept that that cannabis is a completely harmless thing that everyone should use, and definitely there is a lot of beneficial things about cannabis that we're finding out. That's like many other medicinal products. In fact, the vast majority of medicines are sourced from plant sources, or they're adjusted chemicals that come from plants in their original form. But one of the side effects of things like cannabis is it causes an apathy. So that means that people think it's being chilled out or relaxed or whatever, but actually that can become a chronic thing where you're apathetic. That means you don't really respond. There's no drive. There's no get up and go. And so you sit around and you sort of, your time becomes wasted because you don't have the motivation to do anything. Now, some people use that as a way of controlling other things that are going on. So if people are sort of having difficulties with stress, anxiety, they use that to calm themselves down, but it leads to other problems. And this is one of the things. The other thing is that there are some individuals who can actually manifest underlying conditions that otherwise wouldn't have manifested. So maybe, other mental health conditions that wouldn't have come out start to come out when they're using things like this excessively. So nothing, generally speaking, anything, if you take too much of it, can become bad for you. So, for example, if you drank too much water, you can dilute the salts in your body and you can end up in a coma. And water's fine, right? Within limits. This is the whole point. So people shouldn't take sort of these things and just run with it just because we know that there are some benefits that this makes it suddenly allowed. The Islam has a really good way of dealing with this, mashallah. So I'm going to make it easy. I'm glad the brother's reading, but I think it's important when you're researching that you interact with Muslims and you find out how to sort of interpret things that you're coming across, because you may not understand.
But Imran, isn't it also amazing that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the 7th century, obviously we believe is given this knowledge by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is, if not more relevant today than it was actually even in the 7th century. So now we have cannabis, now we have heroin and cocaine and crack cocaine and all of these things. And subhanallah, this religion of Islam, this religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Hamza's mentioned this many times about the 5 poisons. And it is one of the poisons. If you look at societies and you look at, there's a 16 or 18% death of alcohol in England in the last year because of the COVID. People are at home and they're drowning their sorrows by drinking more. How many more people are taking drugs as a consequence to sort of numb the mind, to get them out of this, this stress and this depression of COVID? And subhanAllah, all of these things are addressed in the 7th century. And if you look at the depictions of what Mecca looked like in the 7th century, you've got mud buildings with goats running around and dust flying everywhere, basically. Subhanallah. And these teachings are as relevant today, if not more so, in fact, than they were even in the 7th century. And what does Allah say about the intoxicants? Allah says, if you wish to prosper, stay away from such things. In other words, Allah has linked prosperity of an individual, of a community, if you stay away from these things. And so the wisdom is, and these pearls of wisdom, alhamdulillah, that are, scattered upon us because of the Quran, because of the hadith, the stories of the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Truly, it should give us an immense boost in our iman, really,
SubhanAllah.
Absolutely, you're right.
Just for any guests waiting to come on. So imagine now this was anonymous artist coming on now. This is how we want you to come onto the perfect storm. I believe Islam is wrong when it prohibits cannabis. That's it. That's your belief. And then we'll examine that reason. Don't come on, tell you think Islam is true and this and that and bless Muhammad. And we're scrabbling what you're talking about, mate. So guests who are waiting, make sure you come in on here with something succinct that you believe to be true that we can scrutinize. Don't come on here to ask us a question, please. It's not
okay,
that
we'll briefly get Case on.
We wanted to give his view of 1 John 5:7.
I think Case has come on to concede the point that 1 John 5:7 is indeed a forgery, as we claimed. Is that right?
Can you hear us, Case? We still can't hear you. We still can't hear you.
I wasn't calling you crazy. I was saying we can't hear you.
Case, is your microphone working?
This is the strong case for Islam. If you want good internet.
Are you muted?
Just joking.
Just check your microphone, Case. Okay.
I think
come back again. Try to come back again, and we'll try to get you on, Case.
Yeah, you're wrong, Case.
Okay, so we've got the believer next. Hello there. The believer. Hello.
Seems to be a Muslim quote there. I don't know. I'm sure.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. How are you?
Sorry, what's your question?
Not a question. What does he believe?
Okay.
What's that?
What do I believe? Okay, I can tell you briefly enough what do I believe. To be honest, it's my belief fluctuates, and I believe in the Quran. I believe in the teaching of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
You're Muslim?
And I just came to Islam recently.
Okay.
Yeah. And I still have some questions, to be honest. I don't have some...
the problem is this is the wrong stream.
No, it's some shocking, controversial sort of... it's a confusing question that I found most
No, actually can't hear anything that's being said.
Believer, we can't hear you because you're just really, really breaking up.
I think your voice change is sort of not quite tuned right because
we're really sorry, but because we just simply can't make out what you're saying. We'll get Case back on very quickly. Hopefully his microphone is working. Hello, Case.
Here we go.
Hello, Case.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. You're very smart. You're very smart, Case. You have your tie on and everything. You look very serious today.
That's very good.
Yeah, well, I am always serious. I am always serious. Yeah, there was
That's good.
there was a problem, I think, with my laptop because I joined from the laptop, so there is a problem with the laptop. So I now joined from the phone. So
Not a problem. Not a
I
problem.
think Brother Hamza was going to ask you a question, actually.
Yes. Did you do your research into 1 John 5:7?
Well, I thought that I would come here. Is the intention of this show that you ask me questions, or that I ask you?
Well, first we've got to establish your intellectual honesty. Have you? Yeah. So have you researched, like you said you were going to do, 1 John 5:7 to see whether or not it is indeed a forgery?
No, brother Hamza, I did not promise you to search anything out. I already told you. If I don't believe that 1 John 5:7 was added, and I told you also why it was not added, because there is no reason for me to think that there is something wrong with the verse. Why?
Okay.
If there is something in that verse that would contain a new idea.
Don't repeat yourself.
Case, you're repeating what you said last time. I think I would humbly suggest that our discussion, in fact, I wasn't in the discussion, but the brothers were. I heard that discussion very clearly. And the next time you were going to come on, you said you would go back and do your research, because I think Ijaz asked you to find this verse in the very earliest scriptures, which it didn't exist, basically. Now, the point that you made, Case, was the reason why you wish that or argue that this is not something that's added, is that it agrees with your theology. And as a consequence, you don't think that it can be wrong. That is completely academically bankrupt, quite frankly, if you argue that case, because what you're basically saying is, because it agrees with what I believe, it couldn't have been added in afterwards. Logically and rationally, Case, you have to accept that people who believed in the Trinity may have added things in to reinforce that view of the Trinity. Now, I think Hamza and Brother Imran and Ijaz explained to you that there is a whole series of scholars many of whom are Christians, practicing, evangelical, churchgoers, who have admitted openly that this verse didn't exist. It's a fraudulent verse. As a consequence, some of the Bibles have removed that verse. Okay? So Case, unless you've done the research, we have to really get somebody else on. Otherwise, you'll simply be repeating your argument.
Just before you do that, Abbas, Case, what we're willing to do is this. We're willing to put your belief that 1 John 5:7 was authored by John, through the perfect storm. So you're claiming that this was part of the original, and therefore we're willing to put your claim to the test.
Okay. I have one question. I just it's actually outside of this
And don't waste it here.
Sorry.
Okay, this format is for us to question your belief.
Yeah, okay. I understand you fully, but I have a question. Am I welcome on your show? I just want to know. I just want to make sure if that is the case. Am I welcome on your show?
Oh, okay. I'll give you the frank treatment. Yeah, we're here interested in sincerity and intellectual honesty. And so if you say something, or we challenge something, and you defend that position, and then we demonstrate to you that position cannot be defended, or you have a flawed premise supporting whatever you're doing, and you concede that point, and you say, you know what, I'm wrong, and I accept that, and then you can bring another point. But if we get to a position where we give you a simple thing to test, and you refuse to do so, and then you want to talk about something else, then no, you're not welcome.
Okay. Well, I thought I told you that I don't agree with you. I'm just gonna. You said you would put this verse to the test, right?
No, what we say, we'll put your claim to the test, because you're believing it's part of the original, yes. And so we want to know why you say that.
Yeah. Okay. If you just give me the opportunity to answer that question. I believe it's not added for this simple reason, because it contains nothing new. The whole principle of the Trinity is already in the Old and the New Testament.
It's irrelevant.
If it contains a contradiction in the Bible, if, for example, there is no Trinity in the Bible, and then at once there appears that verse that says the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are one, then I'll agree with you. And I said, yes, Hamza, you are right. Please let me finish.
Here's the problem you have. What kind of standard is that you're using? It's illogical.
No.
Just because, so according to you, anyone can write what they like later on in the Bible, as long as it confirms with the general doctrine of what was said before. That's your principle.
Hamza, you are saying to me there is a verse here that was later added.
Yes.
So you are the one to prove why it was added.
No.
I didn't say it was added. You said it was added.
I don't need to prove why it was added. I just need to demonstrate it was added. Why is irrelevant.
Well, no, of course it's relevant, because if you say something is added, of course it's relevant, because if you say it was added, the one who added it had a purpose.
Okay. I'll make it easy for you. Okay.
Because it was not God. Because it was not God.
Show me one verse in the Quran. Sorry, give me one verse in the New Testament other than this verse that explicitly explains the concept of Trinity. One verse.
Of course. Oh, I have many verses.
No. Listen. Case. Don't go there to a verse that implies Jesus is God, and then go somewhere else that implies the Holy Spirit is God, and then implies that Jesus. No. I want you to show me one verse that explains the doctrine of Trinity.
Okay.
So the key phrase within this, just to clarify that a little bit for you, Case, is the key phrase that you find within this verse that was added. So there's two things. There's an observation that it was added. We can observe this. This is observable. And then there is the motivations behind it. These are two separate questions, and you're mixing them together. So if you're going to say that just because it matches, it's okay, then anyone can, as Brother Hamza said, anyone can write anything that matches, and you would say that's okay. And that's illogical. This is the point behind it. But if you're going to try and produce a Trinity that is different, that you say is in this verse, that is like this verse in elsewhere, the specific words within this verse that are strongly indicative of the Trinity, and this is probably the reason why it was added, is these three are one. So find these words, these three are one, anywhere else you like, anywhere. Free, you got a free reign.
Okay. I just want to settle something with you, because otherwise I will go out of here. I need, if you can grant me the freedom to answer the question I want to answer it, then I will answer it. If you cannot grant me that, then I will go out, and then you can receive.
Case. I'm making it easy for you. The question is this: find a verse that says these three are one. If you can't find a verse that says these three are one, then you failed. You haven't answered the question.
Yeah, I have all the freedom to answer the question how I want to.
Yeah. Well, you can answer it as you like, but if it doesn't contain these words, these three are one, then you haven't answered the question.
Well, that is up to you.
Case.
That is according to you.
I'm not going to waste our time then, all right? Because I know exactly what you're going to try to do, and that's exactly what we know you're going to do, because that's all you Christians do. Yeah, you cannot find that concept anywhere. So clearly, some Trinitarian-minded Christian, some Trinitarian-minded scribe has added this verse. So when people like yourself think the Bible says these three are one, according to the majority of Christian scholars, it's a forgery, mate. You can cling to it all you like. The scholars say it's a forgery. It isn't found in earlier manuscripts, other than I think it's the 16th century. Yeah, Erasmus rejected it twice. He is the one who put the Textus Receptus together, and only in his third edition, after pressure, did he add it. So the author of the Textus Receptus, which is the King James Bible uses to translate from, on two editions, the first two editions, it rejected this as a forgery. Yeah. No, you're trying to cling to it.
Yes, because it does not contradict the Bible, and if you just
It doesn't
let me
matter.
show you,
It doesn't
it does
matter.
matter. It does
It
matter.
doesn't matter. It doesn't contradict your understanding of interpretation of the Bible. But if I bring a Unitarian Christian here now, those verses you're going to go to, he'll reject. This is your problem.
So
Right, exactly. So what? Yeah, you're trying to use your interpretation of verses to marry up with this, and it doesn't. This
Hamza,
is
can I
why
just
some scribe in history decided it needed to be in there, and that's that.
you are
And
saying
that ends it. That ends it, mate.
Case, does it matter, Case, if God said that or God did not say that? Does it matter to you?
well, it is. There's here a very simple principle. Hamza is saying this verse is added.
Does it matter if God said it?
Hamza's not saying this verse is added. Christian scholarship is saying this verse is a forgery. Christian scholarship, not me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not Hamza says. Hamza's telling you what your Christian scholars are saying. Hamza's telling you.
They are not mine.
Listen.
They are not mine.
Hamza's telling you what Erasmus, the author of the Textus Receptus, is telling you. Yeah.
They are not my scholars.
Hamza's just telling you what your people are saying.
No, not my people. They are not my people. They are not my people. Don't tell me they're my people. No.
Yes,
No.
Yes.
They are not my people.
Okay, I think Hamza, we've invited you to come on to the. Is it the Perfect Storm? You said no. What stream is he able to come in to provide the evidence?
No, he can.
He's welcome to provide it now.
Okay, he's not going to provide evidence because I know a case. With all due respect, brother,
yes.
And I mean this. I mean this very respectfully, brother. The problem with some Christians is that you ask them a direct question. Of course, we would like to give you the intellectual respect to be able to answer the question how you want to answer it. However, there's a difference between answering a question and then preaching. And the problem with you, brother, is, and again, respectfully, you'll start preaching. You won't give us the answer. And the question that I asked you is, does it matter if God actually said the verse or if he didn't? Does it matter to you?
No, it does not matter because what is written in 1 John 5:7 is not a new concept. So it does not matter. If this was not there.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Case, for coming on. It was great to talk to you. Have a lovely
before you go. Is he gone? Just before you go, Case, I just want to give you, just so that you don't think we're just making this up. Yeah. So what I would like you to do, and this is what Hamza asked you to do last time, is go and look at the manuscript evidence. It's very easy. You just have to look up the manuscript evidence for 1 John 5:7. What you're going to find is there are 8 manuscripts that contain 1 John 5:7. Okay. 4 of them, 1 John 5:7 is written in the margin. It's not part of the main text. Somebody's written it in the margin.
Yes.
4 of them have it in the text. Okay. The earliest of these manuscripts is 10th century. So nothing before the 10th century has this. The earliest is 10th century, and that contains it written in the margin.
Yes.
All of the others are 16th century or later. Okay. So I'm just telling you. So now we have 8 manuscripts that contain this, 4 of them in the margin. Earliest is 10th century, which is in the margin. Anything before that is not within the text. So now I'm just telling you, as a purely neutral basis, when I look at this, I know that this is not in the early manuscripts and somebody added it. It went from a margin note to the text. This is, you can see the transition. Wasn't there before at all, not in the margin and not in the text. Yes. Then it went into a margin note, and then it went from a margin note into a text. Now, this has been recognized by the scholars, which is why they removed it. Now, all we're asking you to do is don't take my word for it, don't take Hamza's word for it, don't take Abbas's word for it. Go and look yourself.
Yeah.
Show us some early manuscript. Say, look, here's a 4th century manuscript, 5th century manuscript that contains this. And then we can say, okay, hands up. No problem. But this is not what you're doing. What you're doing instead is saying, look, as long as it matches the Bible, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what is when it was added or who added it. Now that's not really right, brother Case. I think you should look at that a bit more detail.
I just want to ask something, brother Imran.
Yeah.
If you open, for example, the NIV and you go to Romans 8 verse 1, then it says, the verse is written in NIV, there is no condemnation on them who are in Christ Jesus. And then there is an A. When you go down, you see that it is written, some later manuscripts say on them who walk not after the flesh but after the spirit. So the NIV is saying that the early manuscripts contained only Romans 8 verse 1 in this wording. There is therefore no condemnation on them who are in Christ Jesus. Point. My question to you is the NIV right?
Is the NIV right about what? That there are differences between, because what the NIV is doing, and I'm going to, what's the reason for the footnote? The reason for the footnote. So the way the Bible is put together is there are many manuscripts. You know this, Christians. There are many manuscripts that 4th century onwards, and most of them are much later than that. There are many, and they don't match with each other word for word. There are slight variations amongst them. So what the scholars do is they get together and they amalgamate the text to bring a text that you have. So now if you took the Bible that you have and you tried to match it to any single of those thousands of manuscripts that you claim, it wouldn't match any of them. Why? Because it's a combination of verse from this manuscript here, verse from this manuscript here. So what the NIV does is it makes a note and it tells you that some of the earlier manuscripts have a slightly different wording. So that if you went to check the early manuscript, you say, oh, it doesn't say this. Why is that? And they're saying to you because there's a variation. Now, this is not an evidence for Christianity. It's an evidence against Christianity.
Yeah, but my question to you is, what about the truth about Romans 8 verse 1? What is the truth? Is the wording of Romans 8 verse 1, there is therefore no condemnation on them who are in Christ Jesus, point? Or is the truth that the wording of Romans 8 verse 1 is, there is therefore now no condemnation on them who are in Christ Jesus?
There's a third option, Case. There's a third option. There's a third option.
Yes.
The third option is that there is an earlier manuscript that you don't have access to, that is no longer available. It's not available to us now, that contains maybe what is closer to the original wording, and we have two offshoots which are variants. Now, the problem with Christianity is that we have nothing for the first 300-400 years in terms of complete manuscripts. Now, what that means is that when you're trying to work out what exactly was written originally by the author, whoever the author was, you're having to guess. You're having to say, okay, we've got all of these manuscripts. Most of them say this. Some of them say this. Okay, we'll go with that for now, and then we'll stick this in. But there's no way to get back to the original. So the three options are available: either one wording or the other wording, as mentioned by the NIV, or three, an earlier wording which we don't have access to.
Why I'm saying this, because the NIV says the John 1:5 verse 7 was not in the early manuscripts. So if you believe that the NIV is saying the truth, then I suppose that you also believe that the same thing that the NIV says about Romans 8 verse 1.
Oh, you've misunderstood, Brother Case. You've misunderstood. So we're not using the NIV at all. You've brought the NIV. We're using the actual manuscripts. We're not saying to you, look at the NIV. We say, forget the NIV. Forget the whichever Bible, forget English translation, forget them. Go to the original sources. This is what we're telling you to do. Go and look at the Greek manuscripts. Go and look at what Erasmus wrote. He did 3 renditions of the Textus Receptus. Go and look at them. You look for yourself and see, okay, where is it? And then you can come to us and say, look, brothers, I looked at the original manuscripts, and this is what I have found. And then we can go further. But at the moment, it's what you're saying is, well, because it fits with what I believe, it must be true, and that's not really a reasonable approach.
Case, one other thing I'm going to just say to you before you go, Case, is this, and please don't take it wrongly. There is a huge responsibility on the shoulders of everyone who speaks about religion and who is representing God, i.e., by what God has said to the people. Now, we've given you very logical, very rational arguments as to why you are wrong. Now, if you still insist that, no, I'm right, and it doesn't matter whether these were God's words or they weren't God's words, as long as they agree with what I believe, which is the Trinity, and you confuse other Christians to believe the same as well, then remember, on the day of judgment, you will have to stand in front of Allah and you will have to justify why you did that. And this is why when the angels are dragging the people to hellfire, they say to them, did you not use your reason? In other words, when you use the faculty of reason, when evidence is provided to you, you have the ability to decipher the truth from the error. And when substantial amounts of evidence and the weight of the evidence that Hamza and Imran have provided, I think any reasonable Christian would at least be humble enough and honest enough to say, you know what, on balance of probability, it does appear to be a fabrication.
Yeah. Can I just add one more thing to the pile?
Yeah.
Something else for you to look at, Case. Go to the church fathers and see which ones quoted this verse. Yeah, which of the church father citations mentions this verse?
Yeah.
Because I've heard a claim that you can put the New Testament together with all the citations of the church fathers. I don't believe it's true. But the reality here is this: if this is such a profound statement, this particular statement, ends the Council of Jerusalem before it even started.
Okay.
Yeah.
But,
why?
Yeah.
I'll explain why. Let me explain why this statement is so profound. It doesn't just say these three are one. It says three that bear witness: the Father, the Son, basically implying they're equal, basically making the Trinity. Yeah. And if this was said by John, or written by John, that these three are one and they're equal, co-equal, why would it have taken the church 400 years to establish this particular doctrine? It would make no sense if this verse existed and the church fathers would have cited at the Council of Jerusalem. We should have been hearing this verse. But the thing is, you see, we're not hearing it until the 10th century.
Yes.
So like I say to you, Case, if the church fathers are not talking about it, it's not brought up in the Council of Jerusalem. And it's the most explicit statement of Trinity. Anywhere, no Unitarian Christian can dispute that verse. No Unitarian. There are three who bear witness: the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and these three are one. No Unitarian can challenge this. That's why it's necessary to be there. Because if it wasn't there, you don't have nothing explicit. It's the only explicit verse that you have. I'm not going to let you go into it again saying, oh, this verse, that verse. All I want you to do, Case, now, you've had enough given to you. Go away, look at the manuscript evidence, look at the citations of the church fathers. Ask yourself, why did it take the Council of Jerusalem to recognize the Holy Spirit as equal to the Father and Son? Ask yourself why all these things happened. Yeah? Ask yourself, or not ask yourself, ask the scholars, why did Erasmus, the author of the Textus Receptus, only put it into his 3rd edition? He didn't put it in the first 2 because he rejected it as a forgery. So these are the questions for you, Case. Nothing to say anything else now. Nothing to say. Just go away, do that research. That's all you need to do.
Thank you, Case. Assalamu alaikum. Bye-bye.
Take care, Case.
You know, it would be equivalent to the Muslims forgetting La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. It would be equivalent to something like that profound. Something that a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old learns and probably recites and says over and over again. It would be like,
he doesn't know the fundamentals of why he believes what he believes to be true. Yeah. He doesn't understand textual criticism. He doesn't understand higher criticism, which is, he's a lay Christian trying to act like a scholar. That's the problem.
Mm.
Now, if you speak to James White on this, he'll batter this particular verse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Christians, they don't quote this verse. Most Christians you speak to, yeah, we accept that. That's a forgery. Yeah, Case is the only person I've seen trying to bring a flag with it.
Anyway, let's get KH up quickly, and then we'll try to get through. There's a lot of people waiting. Hi, KH.
Yeah. Hi. How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for adding me. All right. Okay. So basically, my question is, I don't want to comment specifically on the exact religion you believe in because I haven't done exactly the kind of research I needed to do, but I have a generalized question about sort of religion in general. So do you believe your God to be a good being?
Yes.
Hey, can I just explain the format of the show?
Yeah, go for it.
You're not here to ask us questions. You're here to tell us what you believe to be the truth of the reality of this world. And then we'll deal with your belief. It's your belief on the table here, not ours.
Okay, I'll do that then. So I believe that, I was brought up in an atheistic household, but I learned a lot about Islam because my parents were refugees from an Islamic country. And my point of view is that a lot of religions try to claim that there's this good being out there watching out for us, that every religion at the center is this God, that it says it's good. And if you read, like, from what I know, everyone preaches that the God is good and you will get what you ask for through prayer and all that. But then the one question I have is, if you go into a children's hospital, no, I'm not asking a question. I'm saying, when you walk through a children's hospital and you see children dying left and right, then I don't believe there's a greater being out there that does good for us.
So what do you believe?
I don't necessarily believe there's anything out there. I'm not saying there's nothing out there, but I don't believe in a certain text. I don't believe in any set religion. I do believe there's a truth out there.
KH. You keep telling us what you don't believe. You don't believe this, you don't believe that. Yeah. We're not interested in what you don't believe. We're interested in what you do believe, so we can challenge it. That's the format of the stream.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, okay, I believe that we're just a random coincidence of an ever-expanding universe, like a chemical. Because there's nothing pointing otherwise. If we take the evidence, we take the most rational outcome, the most likely outcome, and that's it. If I'm presented with evidence of a God, then I'll start to believe in it. But when someone tells me,
Hamza, can I just ask Case a very, very quick question, Hamza? If I can just ask Case a very, very quick question before we move into that arena, into that side. Case, can I ask you a very honest question? If there was no suffering, would you then be a believer in God?
Sorry, me?
Yes, I'm asking you the question. If there was no suffering, would you believe in God?
No, because where would you connect the dot from there being no suffering? There's so many claims about maybe I wouldn't believe in a religion. Maybe I would believe in a God, but not a set religion that dictates what that God specifically
that wasn't my question to you, Case. KH. My question to you was: would you believe in a God if there wasn't suffering?
I would be much, much more likely to believe in a God if there wasn't suffering. Yes.
Why is that?
Because the point, religion states that, most religions anyway, states that a God is good and they will listen to your prayer. And
no, but you just said that you wouldn't necessarily believe in a religion, but you would believe in God. So I'm asking you the question: why would you believe in a God if there wasn't suffering?
I would believe in a good God if there wasn't. So I would be more likely to believe in a good God if there wasn't suffering.
So how do you understand the word good?
Well, good is, to me, basically means no suffering.
So subjectively to you. So you're subjectively, so you think suffering is a bad thing?
Yeah, obviously I get that it's subjective, but to me, suffering is pain, and it's pain that's not your fault. That's present in your life.
Yeah. So you think pain is a bad thing?
Well, physical pain, maybe heartbreak is a human thing to go through, but physical pain, if you get hit by a car, that's one.
I'll give you an example. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want an example?
I hate it when I get toothache, mate. Honestly.
When you get what?
Toothache.
Toothache, yeah.
Serious pain. Is that pain good or bad?
Well, it's bad.
Why is it bad?
Because how is pain a good thing?
Okay. So toothache is a good thing because it tells me there's a tooth got a problem. It's either something rotten, there's a hole, there's an abscess, there's some infection. And without that pain, I wouldn't know.
Let me give you a good example, Hamza, that applies here. So there's a condition called leprosy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in that you lose sensation. You don't feel touch. So if you cut yourself or you bang yourself, you don't notice it. So what happens is actually small things can set in, like infection. You can damage yourself quite well, and you end up actually losing limbs, losing parts of your body because you don't have the sensation of pain. So there's a functional aspect to pain, which is what Brother Hamza is referring to. So, sorry, bro, carry on. I'll give you an example.
I completely understand that, the functional aspect of pain, but that's what pain is made for. But a lot of people could argue that many types of pain, phantom pains, and if you get stabbed, in the stomach and you can see the blood pouring out. Why do you need to feel the pain? It's an evolutionary trait. If you can see the injury, you don't need to feel the pain. If you're under surgery,
what's an evolutionary trait?
The pain you feel is an evolutionary trait.
Why?
Pain itself is an evolutionary trait.
Based upon what?
Based upon Darwin. I mean, his research points to the fact that those who are more likely to feel the pain that they're undergoing, like anything that might happen to them, they're more likely to survive.
When did this
survival of the fittest.
When did this pain situation become part of the evolution chain? According to Darwin.
What do you mean evolution chain?
Well, you just quoted Darwin, so I'm assuming that he believes somewhere along the line of this evolution, pain entered the fray. When?
Yeah, it's just a big picture of survival of the fittest. If, as you said, pain
What's survival of the fittest got to do with pain?
Because pain, as you said, is a functional, or Imran, as you said, pain is a functional.
But then you should think pain's a good. Yeah, but if you believe in evolution, then you should think pain is a good thing. Does pain help survival of the fittest?
It does, but that's my point. If you see yourself
pain is a benefit.
But yeah, it is a benefit in certain situations. My point
was,
if
benefit or a good benefit.
It depends on the situation. If your hand gets cut off, you can see it's being cut off. Why do you need to feel the pain?
Why do you feel the pain? Why? So you say if you couldn't see your hand off,
there's two different worldviews here, KHM. So what you're saying is that you look around and you see suffering and pain, and that means that God can't be good. That's your claim, right?
Yeah, but I feel like we kind of backtrack by me seeing physical pain.
Now you're into your feelings now. Now you're telling us you're.
Let me finish my thoughts. Yeah? So if that's the case, then you could also. Then obviously your theory doesn't work against a God that isn't good in your view, right?
And my theory doesn't work against a God that isn't good. What do you mean by that? So
you're saying that your problem is that because religions claim that God is good, therefore I see things that aren't good are happening, and so therefore God doesn't exist, right?
No, yeah, I'm saying that's more like that. I'm not saying that's the reason he doesn't exist. There might be an explanation for it, but
so your theory doesn't work if God isn't good as you claim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it an argument against God or your particular conception that you brought forward?
Yeah, but I feel like me saying physical pain kind of backtracked on the point I was trying to make. I said that's one of the aspects. Another aspect I'd like to introduce because
you haven't understood the question, KH. I've asked you.
No, I understood the question, but let me.
What was the question I asked you? You can just clarify for me because it sounds like you haven't.
You asked me if the argument I made against the God, which I said, I made that against the God, could argue for against no God as well.
No, I didn't
ask the
question.
Okay, then.
Okay, so let me ask you a question and have a listen to it. And if you, I'd appreciate if you respond it to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first question is, the first statement is that you said that you don't believe in God because God is purported to be good and you see bad things happening in the world. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So then I asked you, does your theory work against a God that isn't good as you understand it? So it doesn't work against that. Yeah.
Does my theory work against a God that isn't good? Yeah.
As you understand.
No, it doesn't. Because if God wasn't good, then that would explain. Yeah.
So that would mean that your theory is not a theory that actually proves whether or not God exists.
No, it's not.
It's not. It's only an argument that you can make against a conception of God that you've put forward, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you've put this conception forward that religions claim that God is good, right?
Yeah.
Now, the question I'm asking you is, are you accurately depicting what religions claim about, or Islam? Let's talk about Islam. Islam claims about God. Or are you making a straw man to make the point against? That's my question to you.
Yeah, I understand the question. From what I've understood by many Muslims I've talked to and many Christians I've talked to, they believe that God is good and will grant upon them the mercy if they pray. If they live a good life.
You're mixing two things up.
Who believes this?
Exactly.
Many Muslims that are my friends that I've talked to and Christians, they believe that God is a good being, and if they pray and if they just believe in God, they will be rewarded in the end. And yeah, but there's this cognitive dissonance between what I just described as I see bad things happening, and they can't really describe that, even though they believe that God is a good being and he will help you if you pray. And then what I normally ask them is, okay, well then you go into a children's hospital and you ask every parent if they pray, and those who don't pray, and the numbers will come out that the children who pray die just as much as those who don't pray. And then why is that? Why do innocent?
KH, can I just quickly ask you a couple of things?
Yeah.
Number one, I think Imran has alluded to this point very, very well, actually, which is that your concept of what Allah is, God is to Muslims, and what Allah has disclosed to us Muslims as to the purpose of our life and what we will actually go through in our lives, it just appears, brother, that you really don't know what the concept is. So it is a straw man, because what you're saying is that some of your Muslim friends have basically said something to you because you don't agree with that. Therefore, there can't be a God, right? Now, the point to you is quite simple, really. If God had already told human beings that you will be tested, that you will go through difficulties, that you will lose lives, that you will have all these problems. So, for example, I give you the verse in the Quran. Allah says in chapter 29, verse 1, it starts with Alif Lam Mim, and it says, do people think once they say we believe that they will be left without being put to the test? We certainly tested those before them, and in this way God will clearly distinguish between those who are mindful and those who are liars. So Allah has already given us the formula that this life is about difficulty. It is about struggle. In fact, one of the things that we're told, when the angel takes the souls of the individuals, those souls are passed on and to other angels until they are presented in front of Allah. And the angels will say, for the good person who dies, move, hurry, rush, because this person was a pious person. He's come from the trials, the tribulations, and the difficulties of earth, from the life of this earth. So we believe that this life is a struggle, that there will be problems, that there will be sickness, there will be health, there will be death for some early, there will be death for some late. So our concept, you see, is something that perhaps I feel, KH, that you don't understand. And where the straw man comes in is that you assume that the word good is synonymous with no suffering and no difficulties. And it's because you make that definition that you're struggling to actually, I think represent Islam clearly.
Yeah. I've got two more verses of the Quran for you, KH. One of them says, do people think they will be left to say we believe without being tested? We certainly tested those before them, and Allah will clearly distinguish between those who are truthful and those who are liars. And another verse, Quran, verse 3, verse 186, you will certainly be put to test in respect of your properties and lives, and you will certainly hear many hurtful things from those who are given the scriptures before you and from the polytheists. We expect this. We expect and accept and deal with. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. If you take a country like Somalia, and you see the civil war and the troubles and the famines and all of these things, what's the suicide rate there? Go to Gaza. What's the suicide rate amongst the people who are, oh, woe is me, and kill? This is their test, subhanallah adim. I was chatting to someone from Gaza or Palestine, one of the two, West Bank. I don't know where it was, around that region. I'm going to say Palestine. And I was saying, oh, we're praying for, hopefully these things have eased from you. And all. He turned around and said to me, he goes, this is our test. This is what Allah's put us here to do, and this is our test, and we'll face our test. So this is the problem, and this is re-emphasizing it, KH. Your understanding of good is based upon no suffering, where we've already established that was flawed with the toothache example, because pain is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And I've used this example before, but I'm going to use it again. Through pain, we grow as human beings. So I'm going to give you a prime example of this. Remember the little girl called Sarah Payne who was murdered 20 years ago? I don't know how old you. How old are you, KH?
I'm 24.
24, but you're not in England, are you? You're not in the UK.
No, I live in Sweden.
Okay, fair enough. So anyway, it was a little girl, and her mum and dad were from this local council estate, and the little girl was murdered coming back from, I think it was from swimming or something.
Yeah.
That mother of that daughter now, she's a baroness, and she brought in a law called Sarah's Law, which made sure that any paedophile who came out of prison, they had to be put on a register, and people around the area need to know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
All because what happened to her little girl. She was, now if that didn't happen to her little girl, she would have stayed as she were. But it's through adversity we grow. Through the put the iron through the fire to become steel. If you want the best part of the olive, you need to crush it. And this is how Allah knows how we are as human beings. This is how we grow, through adversity. Just as you said it prime, actually, survival of the fittest. Yeah, we learn, we adapt. This is how human beings are. So it's through suffering we learn. So, for example, if I get toothache, I'm going to go back to my toothache example now. So I get toothache and a tooth is rotten, yeah, and I have to go through that pain and the abscess and whatever, and the tooth gets filled eventually. Guess what happens after that? I make sure I brush my teeth regularly because I don't want to taste that again. And what does that mean? By me brushing my teeth regularly, I avoid that pain and I keep my teeth healthy. If I don't look after my teeth, I'm punished for it. SubhanAllah. My teeth have rights over me. SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
But the point being made is a very simple one. Pain is not necessarily a bad thing. And when you come with that premise, and it's a flawed premise.
Yeah.
Can I unpack something for you a little bit more?
Yeah, I just want to respond after, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So, cool. I mean, I said before that the idea that you put forward doesn't work for a different concept of God. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not gonna outline the concept of God in Islam immediately now for you, but I'm going to ask you a question. You said that you said you believe that we're just sort of not how nice way. So we just happen to be something that are arisen out of the mechanics of the way the universe works, and we happen to be these conscious beings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're essentially sort of a really amazing accidents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in your conception of the world, how do you believe that there is no purpose, no intention? We're just random accidents. We're here for a short time, and then we're gonna, go into nothing. It doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. Is there any good or evil or suffering or non-suffering
in the world today? You mean?
No. In your understanding of the way the universe is, there is no creator. There is no purpose. We are just accidents that have happened, just like a chemical reaction is happening and it's produced the sun. There's a chemical reaction here has happened to produce your brain over millions of years. Is there anything significant about you, important about you? Is there anything good or bad in the world? Does the baby dying or not dying, or the lion eating somebody's child or not eating somebody? Are any of these things in themselves good or bad or meaningful?
Yeah, I think my belief is that the difference between good and bad is good is choosing the path of least suffering. So lying.
KH, you're not answering the question, my friend.
I thought you asked me if I believe in good or bad, or if it's a thing in my understanding of the universe. I'm trying to answer that.
Yeah, so when the lion eats the child, the lion is making a conscious choice. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it's a path of least resistance. That lion has to eat. You understand that the lion has to eat, but it's choosing the path of least resistance. For me, for example.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing because the lion has to do it to survive.
Okay, so another thing for the child. Similar example. If somebody, because now I'm a product of my evolution, and I'm a product of all of these things that have happened. I'm a random a process where I've become an individual is a random process. Everything that I do is dictated by whatever I've learned, experienced, or whatever. And I go on to do something horrible like killing somebody. Yeah. Because that's the nature that I've now acquired because of my evolutionary and experiential pathways. Am I doing something good or am I doing something bad when I do that?
You're doing something bad from my perspective.
Where does the badness come from?
The badness comes from you not choosing the path of least suffering.
Why is that bad?
No. I am following. I'm going to use your example now. I'm following the path of least resistance. I am simply acting out my personality based upon my evolutionary pathway, based upon my personal experiences and everything that's led me to where I am. the thoughts that are going through my mind are simply the chemical reactions that are caused by the chemical reactions from the previous point, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And I am just really a mechanism that has the illusion of free will that does things. So if I stick a knife in a child, that has no moral quality to it. It's just an action, like the lion eating the baby and me eating the baby. What would the difference be? Why is it when it comes to me that you're saying this is bad, but when it comes to the lion, you're saying this is okay?
Yeah, I think. I think.
So why are you making this distinction? Because you are just like the lion, but you've just followed a slightly different evolutionary pathway.
Yeah, so it's blurring the lines between subjectivity and objectivity. I think my point is that as much as you can be objective, choose the path of least suffering. For a lion, now, if you will, they don't have free will as we humans understand it. They don't have free will, so I can't comment on what an animal would do. But us humans, I'd like to believe that we have free will. Now that's another discussion. But say we have free will, then we're conscious enough.
You can't do that, my friend.
No, I'm saying if we have free will.
You're bringing things in an ad hoc way. Are you adding things on to make the answer sensible? Because we know, you and me both know that me killing someone is bad. We know this inherently. Yeah. It's within you to know this. The question we're asking you is justify it with your worldview. Now you tack on things that can't be explained in your worldview. Like
I did justify it, but the answer didn't satisfy you. I'm choosing
what you're doing, KH. What you're doing, KH, for some reason, when it comes to the lion, you're just thinking about the lion. When it comes to the human, you're thinking about the victim. You've switched it. Yeah. So, for example, you said, was it this path of least resistance? What does that even mean? You mean the easiest way to do something?
Path of least suffering.
It's like least resistance.
I said path of least suffering.
For who?
For it's impossible to say who, but objectively for everyone involved.
Come on, a lion eats a baby. Who's the least suffering?
Okay, so it depends if the lion ate the baby because it had to, or if it just did it for the laws. That's the difference.
Let's say it did it just because it was near its cubs. Is the lion bad now, or is it protecting its young?
So for the protection of its cubs.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example of what the lion does. Yeah. So the lion, a male lion, when it takes over another pride, it will kill all the infant lions that are there, so that it can mate with the females will come into heat. It will mate with them, so it can pass on its own genes. Is that lion killing the infant lions, the cubs? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Again, I can't comment on an animal's actions. We don't know how an animal acts. I'd have to know. I'd have to read the science behind it of why it acts the way it does.
You can't say that according to your worldview, because you believe we're all animals.
I never said that.
Yes, you did. You said we're chemicals floating around and random.
I never said we're all animals.
Are you not an animal, my friend?
I thought you quoted Darwin earlier. Doesn't Darwin think we're all animals?
Yeah, no. I never said we're all animals. Yeah, I do believe we're chemical coincidence.
According to Darwin, we're just highly evolved amoeba.
Yeah, no, he does believe that we're part of the animal kingdom just as much as anything else.
So there's no distinction between us. Do you believe we're part of the animal kingdom?
I think scientifically we are part of the animal kingdom, but if you were to go spiritual, there is something that sets us apart that I can't quite put it on. But that's another discussion.
Do you believe we're part of the animal kingdom? What do you believe based upon whether it's science you've read or whatever you believe? Do you believe we're part of the animal kingdom?
Again, scientifically, yes, I do.
You know, I'm glad
we're part of the animal kingdom.
That you're saying this, because what you said was amazing. You said there is something spiritual about us. And I'm going to let Brother Abbas in on this now. Brother Abbas, why are you making this distinction, KH? Brother Abbas, please.
You see, Brother KH, the thing here is, I would humbly suggest, please don't take this badly, but I think you're being contradictory in the way that you're assessing the different types of beings and arbitrarily setting value to one over the other. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is that according to your worldview, we are just a combination of atoms that have just been arranged in a slightly different way. We might have a higher level of consciousness. We may have a higher level of intelligence than the next animal. But now we realize that, for example, dolphins and, apes, for example, they're highly intelligent. And in fact, they do communicate in their own sort of language, whether it's clicks, whether it's grunts or whatever it might be. And in fact, scientists have found that they often have a vocabulary of hundreds of words, right? Mm-hmm. So the point here is you have to be consistent. And you're not being consistent. And that's the point. You see, our morality today is a product of social consensus. And that social consensus primarily has come from religious roots. Because if you just go to father or grandfather, people were quite religious, even in the West. And fundamentally, those moral moral framework actually was born from those religious roots. Now, it's very interesting that you said spiritual. And spiritual, you see, is something that I would actually accept to a level, because we're told that Allah has given us all a fitrah, a predisposition, a foundation within ourselves that recognizes the good from the bad. And so you've recognized that certain things are bad. For example, a man killing another man, or a man killing a child, you see. Now, where your worldview gets into a very big problem is, if I said to you, for example, you drug a lady, so she's completely unconscious, and then, astaghfirullah, and then 10 men decide to rape her. And she will have no memory and no physical adverse effects as a consequence. Is that good or bad in your worldview?
In my worldview?
Yes.
In the moment, is she conscious? Well, I guess that doesn't matter. It is bad by any standard of measurement.
So there's no harm as far as the woman is concerned, because she's never going to remember anything.
I understand there's no consequence. So consequentially, you can't argue for it being a bad thing as there is no consequence. But I think in the moment, it's doing that is a horrible thing, and it introduces a bad energy into the world one way or another, even though if there isn't a consequence. This is what, let me just argue the point, but people in the chat are saying that atheism and spirituality don't match. Let me just say the definition of atheism is rejecting the belief, any religion. That doesn't mean you can't sort of
KKH, before we move on, I asked you a very specific question. And I'm not trying to corner you. I'm just trying to explain to you just how untenable morality and the clarity for morality becomes when you take God out of the equation. So I asked you a very simple question. The woman is not going to know. She's never going to know that she was raped by these 10 men. As far as they're concerned, all 10 of them are saying we had the greatest time of our life. We enjoyed ourselves. So there's a more good, as far as they can see, than the harm, because, this woman is never going to know. And I asked you a very specific question. In your worldview, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I told you, I think it's a bad thing. It is a bad thing.
And on what basis?
On what basis? The fact that those 10 men did not choose the path of least suffering.
For who?
Well, they did.
Suffering for who?
They did. That's my point. And you see, KH, this is where God has to come into the equation. Because for us, there's no dilemma. This is not only haram, but immoral, but disgusting, but despicable. And regardless of my inclinations, regardless of my mental state or whatever I might, the mental gymnastics that I might play, it will always be haram, it will always be forbidden, it will always be immoral, and there is no exception.
Yeah. Can I just say...
But for you, my friend, and for the others who say that they believe in the least suffering, if the 10 guys are saying they had the time of their life and the woman is not even going to remember and be left with no physical scarring or problems afterwards, she'll go on to lead a perfectly normal life. Nothing negative will happen to her. And I'm asking you the question, why is it still wrong in your worldview?
Because let me say, I don't need a God. I don't need the fear of a God in my heart to stop raping a woman. I don't need that.
That's got nothing to do with it.
That's got nothing to do with the question I asked you.
We're talking about
you're implying that without a God, those 10 men would have raped the woman because there wouldn't be a consequence. I don't need the fear of a God to stop me from raping a woman.
Who cares? Who cares about that? We're talking about, is it a good or bad thing?
Yeah, but that's the point. You're implying that without the morality guidance of a God,
No. We're using your standard, mate. Least suffering, least resistance, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
We're asking you to be consistent, basically. What we're saying is that if you are consistent, you would have to accept, as vulgar as it is, as sickening as it is, you would have to agree, if you were consistent, that you can't say it's a bad thing. The problem is, though, by saying that, there is something intrinsic within not only your heart, but the hearts of all people, whether they're atheists, whether they're religious, whether they're not religious, that this is an evil act. And I'm arguing that the only explanation that you can have for that is that that moral code has been given to you in your fitrah, something that is in your innate predisposition to recognize something that is evil. And that's the only rational explanation for that.
See, one of the things is if you're using nature and evolution as an example, we know that, for example, sharks, they will forcibly hold down the female and rape the female.
And dolphins.
Dolphins will do the same. We know that, for example, some species of spider, the female will tear the head off of the male after intercourse. So we have these things that have evolved within nature. Now, would you say that the shark doing this to the female of its own species, the male shark doing this to the forcibly copulating, you would not call that bad? You say because the shark is following its whatever its natural pathway is.
No, now, I'm saying I couldn't comment on it.
Yeah, you couldn't comment on it. I agree. You withhold your comment on it. So now the position that you're having is you're holding human beings to a different standard. Now, what we're saying to you is you need to fine. We're not saying we disagree with you holding them to a different standard, but we have a reason for doing that, and you don't have a reason for doing that. Exactly. Because you come from a perspective, and let me just give you what I think your perspective is.
Yeah, go for it.
Wrong. So you come from a perspective that there is nothing immaterial. There's nothing immaterial. So everything is energy and matter. And there are mechanisms that happen within this, and those mechanisms have led to our bodies, our minds, our brains, our experiences, our very thoughts forming. Yeah. So if our very thoughts are the process of chemical reactions that are of themselves have no option but to interact the way they do, then our thoughts are automatically the consequence of those things. So our thoughts themselves are not something that we can have any idea of control. So this idea of even free will or free thinking is an illusion that you have about yourself, because your thoughts are the results of chemical processes or physical processes that are happening within your brain that are just standard reactions, and they could not have happened any other way. Just like if you put sodium and potassium together, you get a certain salt. But there's no.
But what I believe in science doesn't have the answer to those questions yet. That's the point. I can admit that I don't have
the gaps, is it?
Yeah, definitely it's got gaps. That's the whole point of science.
Science to the gaps. So when you don't know an answer to something, you say science just hasn't found it yet. But maybe it will in the future.
But I'm saying to this specific issue, I can't answer because I don't know, and there's no research out there that tells you how it works.
What's the question being asked, and what don't you know?
The problem of free will, our consciousness, where our thoughts come from. All these questions are very that's
the main question being asked is why you're holding human beings to a different standard to animals, where you believe it's the same process.
Animals,
what they are.
Because I believe we have free will and animals don't yet. That's the thing.
Animals don't have free will.
No, I don't believe that.
Oh, okay. And what does free will have to do with anything with regards to the path of least suffering? So, for example, I want a mobile phone. I see a 10-year-old carrying a nice iPhone. I take that iPhone. That's the path of least suffering, isn't it?
Why is that the path of least suffering?
Because I've not had to go and work hard. I've not had to waste my energy and my time and this. I just take it off them. It's easy.
Yeah, but you're taking an active action to take an object from a girl that will probably feel very upset about it.
Sure, I'm pretty sure the baby feels very upset about the lion mauling it, but what can I do?
But that's the difference. I said that you have free will. We don't know.
The difference is
I assume from my set point that it doesn't.
The difference is, KH, The difference is when it comes to the animal, you're thinking of the one doing the action. You're the perpetrator. You're thinking about its feelings. Oh, is the lion hungry? Is this easy? If it didn't eat this, what would happen? All your empathy is for the lion. Oh, the poor lion. I know it was a baby, but come on, the lion needs. All you care about is the lion. When it comes to the human being, forget the human being. Now it's on the victim. Now the victim all care about the victim. It's a double standard, mate.
But it is a double standard. That's why this entire time I've been saying I can't comment on the animal situation because I believe inherently it's a different.
You can't apply as a standard, can you?
No, but I didn't introduce the animal example.
No. You introduced the standard. You introduced the standard of good and bad, and therefore we just went with that. And then you brought it into the
human realm. I brought in the topic of animals, which could be argued as a different
Darwin to the table, mate. You brought this idea of good and bad based upon what actions things do, and then you said that we're just chemicals and reacting and accidentally be here. You don't believe in God, so therefore we're just part of this evolutionary process. But what we're trying to understand is when you apply a double standard, it's no standard whatsoever. If you're going to apply the same standard to the human being, you need to apply the same standard to the lion. But you don't.
I'm applying a standard to human beings. I wasn't the one that brought in the lion example.
No. You know, we brought the lion example to expose your standard as a double standard.
Yeah, but my example, my standards doesn't apply to animals as I understand it from my worldview.
We are animals, according to Darwin, who you brought to the table.
Yeah, but I never said I completely believe everything Darwin believes in. I just quoted one thing he said.
You just pick and choose, basically. KH, can I just say, KH, we'll have to end it, obviously, because I think we're running around in circles. But
yeah, that's fine.
You believe in science and that there isn't a creator, that all matter and energy, I suppose, came about from a big bang of some sort. Is that right?
Yeah, that's most likely. Yeah, that's the most likely theory.
So then you believe that there was obviously a specific level of energy and matter that exploded. And from that point onwards, everything is simply a function of something that came before it. So, for example, if I roll a ball down a slope, once it gets going, it's going to continue rolling down the slope, right? So in effect, it's a determinist concept that we are, since we are simply a group of atoms, some process took place before us, and some process took before that, and took before that, and came before that, and came before that. And so if I now do a crime, for example, I'm simply acting out on a number of processes that came before me, which is the determinist view of how we are, which is scientifically agreed by some people, actually. So in that sense, why would you be able to say good or bad of anything? Because you're just simply acting out according to a process. Imran will probably explain it a lot more eloquently than I have. So how would you argue that then, AH?
Could you repeat the question just quickly?
No.
What argue against what?
Maybe Imran can explain it, because I think Imran will explain it in a lot more clarity than perhaps I have.
I think we've been speaking to you for almost an hour, actually. So I think it might be good. I just want to give you the basic reason why, just before you go, KH, why the first thing that you came with is not fair in terms of representing Islam. Yeah. Because Muslims don't say God is only good or only all powerful. That's the straw man within this argument. This is a common argument that atheists bring. They say, well, if God is all powerful and God is all good, and then why is there evil? Either he's not all powerful or he's not all good. Or it's a standard argument. The main flaw within this argument is that they make a concept of God that Muslims don't hold to, or other people may not hold to. So we don't believe that God is only good and only powerful. We don't believe that. God is all just. God is all wise. We have lots and lots of attributes that all are working together. Now, the question comes in this concept: if we have a God who's all knowing, all wise, and all powerful, and all good, is there a way of explaining the suffering that we see in the world? We as Muslims would say yes, there is an answer to this question. Now, for you as an atheist, it becomes very difficult, because everything that you see that is evil, what you would say is evil around you, that's a subjective thing. Everything that you say is evil around you is it's purely mechanistic actions of the universe. The particles, the subatomic particles, the fundamental particles, they're just interacting, and all the things that you're seeing are just an outcome of that. So just like the lion eating the baby is not a bad thing, then any other action that you see is not a bad thing. Tsunami, storm, the perfect storm, lion eating the baby, or you eating the baby. These are all just actions that happen within the universe because of the properties within the universe. None of them inherently are good or inherently are bad. It's just a subjective thing that you're claiming. And if you take your worldview, it's because of your evolutionary path. If you had evolved, if human beings had evolved like the shark or like the male lion who eats the babies, they could. If you round the take back of evolution back and you let it go again, the evolutionary outcomes may not have been identical, and we could have had that evolutionary pathway where we also think actually you just find that it's all about spreading the genes. Oh, she looks nice. Spread my genes. Walk on. However she feels or not. Ultimately, the genes are being propagated. This will lead to a increasing population. So now, in your worldview, there's no way to argue against that point. And this is where we say that you need, as a human being, who understands morality and who understands right and wrong, that this has to come from somewhere other than the material world, or from societal acceptance of what is right and wrong.
Yeah,
now that's
I completely.
But go on. That was
I completely understand that's your view, and as I said, I don't have the answers to everything. So obviously, any question you ask me, I'm going to administrate. I can't answer everything because I don't have the answers to everything.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, and other than that, a lot of people have been saying, and you guys have been saying, I pick and choose what I believe. But for me, what I see from my perspective is, if religion had the truth, and if morality comes from there, why are there 10,000 different religions? Can I finish? Within those religions, even in Christianity, there are thousands of different subsets that believe different things. So even in the circles of religion, people can't even agree of what you're putting forth as the truth of the universe. If you can't agree, how do you expect me to believe what you believe?
So just so I understand what you just said you agree, you do pick and choose, but so does religion. That's basically what you just said.
No, I didn't say I pick and choose. I said you guys are saying I pick and choose, but I'm saying
I've been accused of picking and choosing, and then you reflected and said so does religion.
But just because I'm accused doesn't mean I do it.
Okay, but you do it because you've already shown something you accept from Darwin, and you've shown something you reject from Darwin. Now tell me why you reject
believe everything one person says.
Okay, I'll make it easy. I'll show you how it works with religion, and you can show us how it works with Darwin. Yeah. Okay, so let's say Islam and Christianity don't agree. Why not? The fundamentals, the idea Jesus is God, and we believe he's not God, just for example. There's your difference. Why do they believe what they believe? We question it, we hear their reasoning and such. Okay, let's come to Darwin now. You don't believe we're all animals, even though Darwin said it, yet you believe this other thing about Darwin. What did he say? Oh, the idea that pain was an evolutionary process. So tell me why you reject Darwin when he talks about we're all animals. And then explain to me why you accept Darwin when he says pain is some kind of evolutionary process.
Okay, because
that will demonstrate you're not just picking and choosing based upon your whims and desires. That will demonstrate you're using your intellect to pick and choose, which is not a problem.
Yeah, of course.
Go on then.
Well, because he's a scientist, and as a scientist, you don't have to believe everything a scientist says.
I asked you. I'm getting to it. Why you don't believe Darwin when he says we're all animals?
I'm getting to it. That specific fact that he said that we're all animals, I don't believe in, because I distinguish free will from us from animals. That's the answer to that. I think that creates a distinction from what he defined as an animal.
Where did you get this distinction from, that animals are not animals when they have free will? Where did you get that from?
No, that's just my observation. That's what I split it up as.
Based upon what?
So I'm saying that I don't consider us animals because we have free will as we understand it. Yeah, this is my standard.
Are you aware?
This entire time you've been saying my worldview, so why wouldn't this be my standard? I'm not talking for someone else.
Because you go. So isn't pain being an evolutionary process? Where'd you get that from?
That pain is an evolutionary process.
Yeah, the idea that
That's from Darwin.
Where? When did Darwin say that, and how? And why do you accept it?
Yeah, that's part of his natural selection theory, the survival of the fittest.
Why do you accept
that?
I see it.
Because I see it around me. I see how it works. But
how does it
I
work?
don't see. Well, that exactly as you said with your tooth problem. And it is part of evolution, as in when you get stabbed in the stomach, right in this world, I can see it and I can go to the hospital and get it fixed straight away. But back then you would need to feel the pain.
It's a positive thing for the evolution process then.
Yeah, it was.
It's a good thing, this suffering. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Evolution doesn't work overnight. No, not circling, because evolution doesn't change overnight. I'm saying pain has changed.
No, but you just said suffering is necessary for the evolution to occur, isn't it?
Physical pain is what we were talking about. Pain.
Oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about. So it needed to
not
occur.
Suffering.
It needed to occur.
Pain.
You just said it. You just said it's necessary in the evolutionary process for evolution.
Yeah, pain is. The process of natural selection.
So is pain a good or bad thing then, according to your worldview? Because otherwise we wouldn't evolve properly without it.
Well, that's the thing. As I said several times, you can't say pain is good or bad. It depends on what type of pain it is. And that's when you brought up the tooth example. So we've been around this. So how am I the one going in circles?
Okay, guys, I think...
KH, you said pain is part of the evolutionary process, didn't you?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, an integral part of the evolutionary process?
It is.
Right, so it's an integral part. So is pain a good or bad thing according to evolution process?
Well, there you go, asking that black and white question again. You can't just say, is it good or bad? It's very black and white. It's very black and white. Yeah, it means essential to it. It's a very core part of it.
So is pain essential for evolution? You believe yes?
It is, yeah.
Is the evolution process a good thing or a bad thing?
But I can't say it's just is. It's not a good or bad thing. That would imply that we can compare it to a standard that's that evolution just is. That's how everything develops.
We're running around in circles. KH, all I would advise you. All I will advise you, KH, is this. Please take your time and have opinions, which are absolutely fine, but please base those opinions on knowledge, on investigation, and on reason. Don't deny religion and then look for reasons to prove it wrong. What I would advise you to do, have an open mind, because you see, you're making certain statements, like, for example, free will. Has science agreed unanimously that free will exists? Because there are two camps.
Mm-hmm.
One camp says...
That's my point.
Hold on a second. One camp says, actually, there is no free will, because we're simply a function, like a domino. When you have a chain of dominoes and you knock one domino over, which is, let's say, the Big Bang, we are just in that chain, one of the dominoes going down, human beings. Now, you've decided, again, arbitrarily, because it suits your argument, to accept that, no, we do have free will. But these are not provable things, for example. These are in philosophy and in science and the science of philosophy.
So just like religion, then.
These things are still being debated, you see.
Just like
so
religion,
you're coming from a point of uncertainty, first of all, even though you think you are following science. And secondly, you are totally misrepresenting even religion. Because when people make this argument and they regurgitate the argument, for example, from Dawkins, or from Ricky Gervais, who says, "Oh, there's 1,000 gods, and some people believe they don't believe in 999 of them, and I don't believe in one more." Ha 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 ha! Like he's made some profound statement.
That's the thing.
And the reality, you see, the reality here is that what, in fact, you find throughout history, throughout communities that were even isolated from one another, that they all seem to have this basic concept of there being something higher than them, responsible for all of this. This is something actually that you find all over the world throughout history, even ancient history. So you really need to come from an angle of knowledge. And I say this humbly to you without I don't want it to sound like a confrontation. Please study Islam. Take our email. We'll be happy to talk to you and give you certain directions, certain things that you can study, and then apply your reason and your knowledge, and then have a more reasoned argument or conclusion. At the moment, I feel, brother, that you started with suffering, then you're claiming things about free will, then you're picking and choosing from science because you say, just because it's a scientist, I don't have to believe everything. Well, quite frankly, if that's your paradigm and people of science are, at the top of that paradigm, then I would humbly suggest that you probably should believe what they say because that's your paradigm. But if you're now going to pick and choose because it doesn't suit your argument or your worldview, I think that's being disingenuous. So please do study Islam. Contact us. Our email address is there. You have been on for quite a long time. I hope you don't feel that we're just rushing you off. And thank you very much for coming on.
No.
KH, what I will say to you, we got another stream on Sunday called Open Forum. And on that one, you can come and ask any question you like, no problem.
Maybe I'll ask why
this one is a different format.
Maybe I'll ask why 1,200 children die of malaria every single day.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. Come and bring it.
It's a great question. You can ask that. But the difference here is that if 1,200 children didn't die from malaria, you still would find a reason to deny God. And that's also, if you're honest,
an argument, though, is it?
That's not an
argument. Well, I would argue against that.
Anyway,
1,200 children do die every day. That's the thing. Anyway,
KH, it was a pleasure to have you on. Have a lovely
thank you.
Take care. All right. Standard. We went full circle, man. Came on. Pain's bad. Then it's a necessary function of evolution. Therefore, it's a good thing.
What I find,
we did our job.
Probably a lot of the viewers will be too young to remember this. I don't know if you guys might remember Woolworths. Woolworths, they had the pick and mix.
Yep.
So you have all these buckets of little chocolates and sweets and maybe 200 different varieties, and you go in there with a little paper bag or whatever, or a box. And you just pick the ones that you like and you leave the ones that you don't like. So the strawberry creams generally nobody touches, right? And all the other nice ones with the hazelnut in and the caramel, they're normally sold out. And I think a lot of times I find that these arguments are just a pick and mix. So I'll pick what I like, but I'll reject what I don't like.
Only after they've been pressed. They need to be pressed and they realize that their standards are double standards, and they try to move the goalposts, and they.
Anyway,
like I say,
so we've got.
Otherwise, I'll have no teeth in my mouth. Right.
All right. We've got.
This one called Iblis. I don't know how long he's going to last.
Iblis, go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I first want to warn you that my English is kind of a bit messy, but I will try my best to speak correctly because someone insisted for me to intervene here. So
before you start, brother, can I just ask you, is your actual name Iblis?
No. It was like a little joke for the video.
So basically you've called yourself Satan and you've come onto the stream to talk to us.
Yes, because that's how in general religious people see me.
Right. Yeah, but you come on our stream and we wouldn't see you in that way. That's good. Okay, so go ahead then.
So who's asked you to come on, not Iblis?
It's someone I met on a forum. I told him I was an ex-Muslim, agnostic, and he was very convinced, a very convinced Muslim. So he challenged me to come here, but I warned him that my English skills are not that good, but I will try.
Okay. So just so you understand the format, you've come on here to tell us what you do believe, not what you don't believe, okay?
Yes, okay.
So what do you believe?
So, like I told you, I'm an ex-Muslim. Now I consider myself as an agnostic. So I'm not like a fundamentalist atheist who says that God doesn't exist, but I'm also not on the religious side. I don't pretend that God exists or not exist.
Okay, so what do you believe then?
I believe that all religions are just, how to say that, spiritual movements, but they don't hold the truth. I think that the universe, the reality, is more complex than what humans might think it is.
Why do you believe that?
I believe that because since I'm a child, I am into science. I read a lot of books, For example, these last years, I read a lot about quantum physics. And when you study such things, you start to realize that the childish way that religions describe our reality is way too simple. It's disappointing, you know.
So you want it to be more complex.
It's not that I want it to be more complex, but when you analyze it, you see that it's way more complex and like bizarre. If you
and when you say religion, what are you referring to?
Mainly to religions like Islam, Christianity, Judaism.
All right. Do you know the differences between Islam and Christianity?
I mean the basics, yes. Why?
Because you're lumping us into the same camp as them boys. You can't judge Islam based upon what you know about Christianity.
Oh, of course, there are differences.
But Iblis, you haven't. Sorry, not Iblis. You haven't told us actually what you believe. You just said you don't believe what religion believes, which is fine.
Well, actually, he said that he believes in God.
No,
he doesn't.
He believes in quantum physics. Okay. So I just want to hear more about quantum physics.
So my beliefs are that I am in a neutral position, where I think that maybe there is some kind of divine entity, but maybe at the same time there is the possibility that there is no such thing.
Why is this neutral?
Because I'm open-minded. I'm open to all the possibilities. I don't take sides.
So you mean? So it sounds like you mean that you don't know. So you're not making a choice.
I don't know, but what I know is that the current religions that we
we're not talking about the religions, my friend, not Iblis. We're talking about you.
Yes.
So what you're saying to us is that you read some science and that impressed you, and then you decided not to know what your position is on the idea of God.
Yes, I acquire a more neutral position.
So why is it neutral?
Sorry?
Why is it neutral?
Because I do not take side. I do not pretend that such thing is real and this isn't real.
Okay, so you haven't made a decision.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so because you haven't made a decision.
No. The only decision that I made is that I do not follow Islam, for example.
Well, who cares?
So the point here is, my friend, not Iblis, is that what you're telling us is that you were a Muslim. This is your claim.
Yes.
You read some quantum physics, and then you.
Well, I mean, come on, that's.
I'm trying to simplify it because I know that you like things very complicated, but I'm trying to understand you, and I'm a religious person. So you were religious, then you became impressed with the Western sciences, and then you decided to be irreligious, and now you're in a position where you are not sure if there is God, and you are not sure if there isn't God.
Yes, we can say. Okay. Yes.
So you're not in a position, as Brother Hamza would say, to make any judgment on the person who is religious or who is not religious, who doesn't believe in God, who does believe in God, because you're not sure yourself.
Yes, but I can recognize false arguments, wrong arguments.
Okay. What are you talking about now?
I mean, in the sense you told me I don't judge religious people, but I can judge their arguments.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. If I said that, I didn't mean that. What I meant was because you're in a position where you don't know if God exists or does not exist.
Yes.
You've not had sufficient evidence either way to make the affirmative statement that I definitely know that God doesn't exist. And you haven't had enough evidence to say I definitely know that God exists. You're taking the position I don't know either way.
Yes.
Okay, so then you're not in the position then, because you don't know, to say the other one, either the people who believe completely that there is no God, as an affirmative statement that I definitely say that God cannot exist, or those people who say that I definitely believe that God exists. You can't say that either of them are wrong because you're not in a position to, or you don't have enough evidence to make your own decision of. You're still learning.
Yes, but there is a difference between defending the idea of God and defending the idea of how to say that you can criticize the idea of God's existence. You can discuss about it, but you can also discuss about other aspects of the religion itself.
So one is a secondary question and one is a primary question.
Sorry?
One is a secondary question and one is a primary. So there's a hierarchy of questions. So
yes,
complaining about, for example, something that somebody does based upon a higher belief it's really irrelevant. Well, you have to deal with so you have to deal with the concept of God first and then move on from that, because it's like a cascade.
Yes.
You understand? So it seems to me that you're in a position where you don't know, but you're asserting that you're insisting. You may be insisting that others cannot know either, or not come to a reasonable conclusion. It may be not 100% certainty, but be on a different part of the dial than you are.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So basically, do you think people who worship God are wrong?
It depends on the context in which they worship God. For example, if you are
they do what God says. They do what God says.
So you pray, you do Ramadan.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think you are wrong.
Based upon what?
Based on no, it's not that you are wrong in the sense that what you are doing is wrong. It's wrong in the sense that I don't believe it will. It's like a waste of energy.
Based upon what? Based upon what?
Based upon my my judgment of reality of what
no disrespect.
It's personal, you know.
My friend, who cares about your personal feelings with regards to other people's actions? Why should we care what you think?
Because you asked me the question.
Yeah, so based upon what? So you're saying people are wrong to worship God because I think they shouldn't be following God. That's basically
no.
Well, that's basically what you said.
No. What I'm saying is, from my point of view, why is it wrong to me? That's what I said.
But your point of view would only make sense if you didn't believe in God.
Not really, because you can believe in God and not pray and not doing Ramadan.
No. The point here is but these people believe in God and they're choosing to obey and follow God. You can't say they're wrong because you have to demonstrate they're not following God. Can you do that?
I can do that, but from a rational point of view, they can prove it that they are following the orders of God.
Can you prove they're not? Can you show them that they're wasting their time? Can you demonstrate that?
Technically, I can, but they can too.
Right. So, but you're making the claim, though.
But they are also making a claim that God exists.
No, that's their belief. You're making the claim. They say they believe in God. They believe they should be following God's guidance, which is what they're doing in their lives. And you're turning around saying you're wrong for doing that, which is a claim on your behalf. So
no, I would say I think it's wrong. It's a waste of energy. But you do what you want.
Based upon what, though? Just based upon your feelings? Is that all it is? Is that all you got?
No, I mean, religion, faith, for example.
No, I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in this. This ad hoc, what's abstract idea of following God. Look, I'll give you an example. I follow God in my life. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I pray 5 times a day. Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Yes.
I stay away from all the things that have been prohibited from me as a Muslim. Yeah.
Yes.
And I benefit from that prohibition. Yeah.
Yes.
So why am I wrong?
I will not say you are wrong. I would say, okay, it's your way of life, but.
So I'm not wrong then.
I will not.
No, I'm not wrong.
But I don't think your way of life is some kind of objectively.
Okay, Hamza, brother, not Iblis. We have lots of people waiting, so we're going to have to really cut the conversation short.
No.
Hamza, because otherwise we're going to really keep dragging on.
No, we're dealing with this.
Yeah. I think we should deal with this, actually.
Okay, go on.
I'll continue.
We may not be able to get through everybody who's waiting. I can see a few people I'd love to talk to, but good friend Hassan's there in the background.
That's right.
So my best wishes to you. I hope we get to you. But if we don't get to you, then please come on again.
Come on.
Hassan got wasted in the arena, so I wouldn't hold your breath.
So can
Anyway. Anyway, sorry.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Basically, please tell me why I'm wrong.
So listen, I think you misunderstood me.
Okay.
You told me you will follow the orders of God. No problem.
Yes.
But what I said, and when I said that I will not told you that you are wrong. I will tell you that for me, I don't think that's objectively true. You know.
And what's that based upon? Just your feelings.
But I can return the question to you.
Okay.
Based on what are you following this way of life?
I believe a man 1400 years ago claimed to be a messenger of God. I've tested his claim, and I've determined that his claim was true.
But why do you believe it's true? But why do you believe it's true?
Because I believe Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, was a messenger of God.
But that's your beliefs.
Yes, based upon reason. Yeah, I don't believe he lied.
But I don't care about your personal beliefs.
You don't care about my personal beliefs.
You don't have any evidence to defend.
Whoa. Just we understand something here. You think my beliefs are as abstract as yours. When I produce you reasons why I believe, now all of a sudden, what? What are you talking about? Now my beliefs don't matter. My beliefs are not based like yours in a vacuum, based upon my whims and desires, based upon my feelings. They're based upon reality. Yours are not.
They are. They are based on. Yes, they are based on an objective analysis.
You tell me what you base your belief that I'm worshiping God is wrong based upon what?
But that doesn't make sense, because how can you affirm that God is right if you don't have any consistent argument to back up your claims?
Who said there's not a consistent argument to back up my clains?
So if we take a step back,
you're making the claim.
So if we take a step back, a very quick.
Look, man, maybe it's the language barrier. I don't know. I'm going to say it again to you. You said religious people are wrong for worshiping, obeying God. I'm a religious person, so you're saying I'm wrong. And the only reason you've got to say I'm wrong is because you feel it.
No. It's based on what I read.
Based upon your feelings. What have you read then? Okay. What have you read that demonstrates I'm wrong?
Almost everything. I mean, read the Quran, for example. Read the Quran, for example.
Bring one thing.
For example, Surat An-Nur, the first verses.
What about Surat An-Nur?
Yes, the first verses, for example.
What about it?
Do you really believe that if God existed, he will order to wipe people who commit adultery?
Sorry?
I mean, just read the first verses of Surat An-Nur.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the evidence that shows that you're wrong when you follow the God's orders.
What am I wrong about? I don't understand.
So what the claim here, I just want to clarify the claim, yeah? So you're saying that because God has given a law or a way of living in the world that you disagree with, for you, this means that God doesn't exist.
But I noticed that you often try to simplify what I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm saying that.
He likes complex things, don't forget. He likes things complex.
We're religious people, so apologies for
simplifying. He doesn't like simplicity.
I think that you are wrong.
He doesn't like Occam's razor. He's a scientist. Doesn't like Occam's razor. He wants to complex everything. Makes everything complex. Go on.
I mean, I read a lot of stuff. I even follow courses of Islamology. I myself was an ex-Muslim, so it's not that I know nothing about Muslims.
You've made this quite a lot, actually. Go on, Abbas, sorry.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to move on. But before we do,
I want to know what he reads.
Not Iblis. Not Iblis. Can I just... question. Not Iblis. Hello there.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the strongest arguments that we often provide for the reasoned argument for Islam? Do you know what those arguments are? Roughly, you don't have to go into detail.
Tell me.
No, you tell me, because you've denied something and you've turned away from it. So I'm presuming that you've studied those arguments. So what are those arguments that are provided?
I may be wrong, but I think, for example, the classical argument, like, for example, the Quran wasn't falsified because we have old evidence. We have old scripts that proves that it isn't falsified.
Okay, so basically you don't know. That's what you're telling me.
we're Muslims, not Christians, mate.
So not Iblis. What we're going to do is we're going to say thank you for coming onto the show. But what is very telling here is that you've denied a proposition, you've denied something, and you've said that you've moved away from it because it's false. And you could not even name me one argument that is often presented to validate our belief in Islam, why we believe the veracity of the evidence is as strong as it is. So thank you very much for coming on.
All right.
Take care. I wish you all the best.
See, that's what it comes down to, you see. When people say, oh, I don't believe in something, you have to at least know what it is that you're not believing in, right? Well, and if you don't even know the basics and you're struggling, you tell me, he's telling me to provide him with the arguments that he apparently left Islam for. How can I mean, come on.
No, but the reason I wanted to keep him at that point was the fact that he was trying to demonstrate why I was wrong by being a Muslim, following Allah's guidance, benefiting my life, avoiding all the poisons. He's going to demonstrate why I'm wrong. And his answer was simply because he felt it. His feelings.
Yeah.
I feel it's wrong.
And it was telling that actually the thing he objected to in the Quran was a commandment not to fornicate.
Yeah.
Which is, where was what does that got to do with anything? That's just really strange.
Okay, let's quickly get Rob on. Rob, we're not going to be able to give you too much time. I hope you don't mind, because there are 2 or 3 people left. And if you don't mind, guys, please don't be upset. But if anybody else joins the back chat, we probably are not going to be able to get you on because we've been going for over 2 hours now. Rob, please go ahead.
Yeah, the prior discussions were very interesting. So to keep to the format of the room, I'll say what I believe. So I do believe in evolution. I do believe in the Big Bang. I am a theistic evolutionist. With respect to morals and laws and ideas and so on, I do believe that's more so a naturalistic process, but at the same time, God's the one that, the whole fine-tuning argument. So he fine-tunes a trajectory in regards to the way laws work, purely because biological organisms, for the sake of natural selection, it's all subjective, is what I'm saying. When you're getting a moment ago, when you're talking about that man raping that woman and vice versa and so on, like those things do have a very cold, very dark evolutionary background to it. But at the same time, you were right at the same time, where God has to, if God wasn't around, then we might as well just be nihilistic and, everything's meaningless. But because as things happen, I believe God works with that and brings the good out of that somehow. Like, we may not know how, but somehow good can come out of it. In other words, there's chaos in the system and God needs to bring order out of the chaos. So that's what I believe.
So far we seem to agree, Rob.
Yeah, and I'm a Christian, as you know, so yeah.
You passed the storm because we agree with you.
You're in the eye of the storm at the moment. I'm just joking.
Yeah, in the stillness of the storm. Yeah.
So, Rob,
do you believe anything else, Rob, at all?
In God?
Seriously, we agree with you. Everything you just said, we agree as Muslims.
Yeah.
So we differentiate between mechanism and agency behind the mechanism. So we agree on that anyway. And that's the difference between a methodological naturalist and a philosophical naturalist. So methodologically, we can be a naturalist, like I can apply science, and anyone can apply science in their day-to-day lives. But philosophically, we're not confined to naturalism because we believe in the unseen, the hereafter, God, angels, etc. And both of those things you can hold those and work quite effectively, and it's not an issue. So we come from the same point of view on that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think this, obviously the difference would be, me being Christian, you're Muslim. So, but how I
you're a Christian. You missed that part. Right. Amongst pigeons. I put my glasses back on. Right, you're a Christian.
No, I've come here before. Like you guys
that's what's to scrutinized, isn't it?
Sorry.
Well, if you're a Christian, that's what needs scrutinizing in the perfect storm, isn't it? Not the fact that you believe what we believe.
Now the eye of the storm is shifting away now.
Of course. Now we got focus.
Yeah.
So you're a Christian. Which type of Christian are you?
I don't really hold to denomination. I do. I'm very entrenched into Second Temple, early Christian ways of thinking. I'm quite fond of the early church traditions, but I don't really hold to a denomination because.
Which Bible do you believe is the most reliable?
Well, I currently read the ISV in combination with the ESV. Again, it's based on the latest critical editions of the New Testament and the Old and all that stuff.
So what do you think about 1 John 5:7? Is it a forgery?
Oh yeah, that when I was listening to that, that is completely fabricated. That's not even in the text. And even if it was in the text, it would actually contradict Trinitarian theology because it's a modalistic argument. So whoever wrote that little note, which is technically what Erasmus thought it was initially, if it was in the text, it would be contradicting the Nicene understandings of the Trinity. So
what's stopping you from becoming Muslim then? Because it's the natural progression for a practicing Christian who truly follows the teachings of Jesus. That person would have at one time been following Moses, who would have at one time been following Abraham, and at one time been following Noah. So now after Jesus came Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So what stops you from accepting the last messenger that was sent in the chain of messengers?
Well, so I'll start with, I guess, because you're asking about my belief and probably the reasons why. And I'm not going to go down, the fluffy sides of things. I'm just going to be frank. It's connected actually to that discussion you're having with the dark nature of reality. And so I find it interesting that when I was listening to one of you mention a verse from the Quran about, this weighing of the good and the bad. And I think, Abbas, you said there's an angel that because the guy's righteous, this angel pushes up the guy further up into heaven. And to me, and I'm speaking here as a scientist as well, majorly in more the astrophysics context, just reality and this thing known as entropy and chaos and suffering and death. I can't see how, if evolution is the mechanism for the way that has now led us for us to have this discussion, how could my very naturalistic works appeal to something supernatural and something outside the system? And from my understanding of the early Christian perspective is that God sees it that way. And that's why the Christian message is that he enters into the system in order to cause a glorification of the system. So the early church called it theosis, so divinization. And to me, I find that to be quite beautiful. And so when I heard you say that about the angel pushing the guy up, I can't help but think of that as like a works-based approach rather than just God's the one that comes down and glorifies me. So that's probably the tension I'm having.
But I think your problem is you believe the New Testament's a reliable source of information, isn't it?
Sure, but I don't need to go into the New Testament.
You don't need to.
I can go back Second Temple, Qumran. I can go back Old Testament. I can even go back pre-Old Testament.
Oh, you don't need the New Testament to hold your faith?
No.
Really?
Yeah. So
how would you know Jesus was crucified for your salvation without the New Testament?
Because if you look at say Acts 1 and 2,
that's the New Testament. That's the New Testament.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying if you see.
We haven't got the New Testament now.
Within the first century, when you look at.
But we haven't got the New Testament. We've taken it away from you.
Well, when you have middle of the first century authors like say Paul and those.
No, but then you need the New Testament, then, isn't it? I said you don't need. You said you don't need the New Testament, and all you're doing now is appealing to it.
No, what I'm saying is those people existed in history, and they utilized a text that didn't exist.
No, but you're believing that what they utilized and what they wrote was true.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that I'm not asserting that the New Testament is true or false. What I'm saying is those people actually existed, and their argument wasn't. They weren't using the New Testament to make their argument. They
Who
were
wasn't?
obviously relying on the Old Testament and the prior scriptures to preach, say, the Good Friday.
How do you know that?
Because that's what you see archaeologically and in
Where?
manuscript traditions and so on.
Where do you see this?
You see it in the Judaism of the first century.
No, how do you know what they were writing and they were appealing to, and how do you know all this information?
So, for example, Paul's undisputed letters.
No, again, how do you know what they were saying? Where did they get any information from? How do you know they were going to the Old Testament and such? How do you know this?
Yeah, so you can look at this in regards to church architecture in that first century period. You can look at this
Church architecture. What does church architecture teach or demonstrate?
So like the Capernaum synagogue, for example, you can actually go there and actually see, based on, say, pillars, writings, and so on.
See what?
Quotations from, say, the Greek Septuagint, because you have an amalgamation of some Jewish tradition to a Hellenistic Jewish tradition, so they become Hellenized.
I think I just make so what we're asking you, Rob, is, and what Hamza's I think getting to is, you talked about this theosis, yeah. You talked about God coming into the system to rectify and to, which essentially you're talking about grace, which is an Islamic concept as well. Actually, this whole thing with the angel pushing up the scales, and this is all, the Prophet peace be upon him said that rejoice because your deeds do not take you to paradise. And they said, oh, not even you, a messenger of Allah. He said, not even me, peace be upon him. It says only if God covers you with his mercy. So we don't have this concept of our works are the thing that will save us. The works are a necessary manifestation of our faith, i.e. that if you have faith and you're obeying the Creator, that manifests itself in your actions that you're doing. Same, probably along the same lines as James would argue. Now, what you're saying is that you have this concept of theosis. You find it beautiful, I agree, but we have the similar concept within Islam, without God having to come into the earth itself for this to happen and punish himself, to pay himself. I'm not going to stop saying himself now. And the issue here is that you said that you don't need to appeal to the New Testament. And Hamza's saying to you, okay, how are you arriving at your theosis concept without appealing to the death and resurrection as mentioned within, which is actually the quintessence of the theosis, which is within the New Testament? How are you coming to that conclusion? Are you pointing to an Old Testament source and saying the theosis is mentioned here and this is where it is? That's probably the question. Is that right, Hamza? Is what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how he derives all this information and what Paul wrote and all of this stuff, and how he knows the history of and all these kind of things, going to the Old Testament. And, even the Old Testament is against the idea of God appearing. That's why he says he's going to send a prophet in Deuteronomy 18:18, because the people were so afraid. So I would assume Rob believes that the prophet of Deuteronomy 18:18 is Jesus. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. But so to answer the question, like if I was living, say, in the Qumran community, this notion of being the sons of light versus the sons of darkness. So in Genesis 1, you have this prerogative of being, say, being an imager of this deity. And then Genesis 2 and 3, you start to go into more, and by the way, I'm appealing to an ancient Near Eastern perspective here of having what the ancient Near Eastern people called a milamu, a type of glory, because you are, you're representing your God and so on. And then the Nakash figure, the shining one figure, which some Bible translations say is the serpent. But Nakash as an adjective can mean to shine. So you have a lot of divine imagery going on. Then the fall takes place. And then finally, for example, when you reach Moses, if you ever wondered why Michelangelo, when he sculpted Moses, there's two horns coming out of Moses's head, that's because he's using a mistranslation in the Latin Vulgate, because the Hebrew, which the Latin Vulgate was using, actually it says it's horns of light that were coming out of Moses's face. And this is where in the tradition you have Moses needing a veil to cover that glory. So this is what's known as the Malamu in the ancient Near East. And so this theme, if you see in the Old Testament, you'll shine like the stars, as God tells Abraham in Genesis 12. And your offspring will be like the stars. This theosis language continues through Daniel, in the book of Daniel, Daniel 12. Everyone will be resurrected and be shining like stars.
But Rob,
honestly, you remind me of a Hebrew Israelite who just takes these words and interprets them and then creates this thing. This honestly.
I agree, Hamza, because you've not really described what you've described is that people are metaphorically understood to be sons of God on earth, in that they shine and they have this, these good qualities. But the theosis you were pointing to is God intervening in the world Himself to bring about its restitution.
Yeah.
So that was the point that Hamza was asking, like, where is that in the Old Testament?
But that's what I'm saying. You have this theme play out in a glimpse, like a pseudo glimpse of what's promised. Now, how is that possible? What's the mechanism behind that? And so, if you're going to go down a metaphysical route, a philosophical metaphysical route, that we're talking about ontologies here. And so, I find the model. Now, this is not I'm not using the New Testament as authoritative. I'm just saying the model that's represented in the New Testament. Say the common Christian Philippians 2, when Christ is in the morphe, or the form of God. He comes out of that in kenosis. He's emptying himself in order to then take our terrestrial morphe and take it up to his level. And so I find that the means by which. So in other words, the incarnation and the resurrection is the means by which to do that.
I find that completely bizarre. I find when I try to read the New Testament. For example, who did Jesus say He's going to show a sign to? Well, first He said He wasn't going to go a sign to. Who did He say He's going to show a sign to? What was the sign of Jonah? Who was it supposed to be demonstrated to?
He was going to demonstrate it to the Jews.
Who asked for a sign?
The Pharisees did.
Right. Did he appear to the Pharisees after His resurrection?
Sure.
No, He didn't.
That's the 500 people that Paul speaks
about.
No,
it wasn't. No, it wasn't. What are you talking about?
Well, it is, because in Galatians he speaks about the super Jews.
Right, so here we go to Paul now. So all of a sudden you've jumped, and now you're now taking Paul at his word, which goes back to my original question. Why do you believe what Paul wrote is reliable source of information?
No, but you're using that New Testament example in an authoritative way, so I'm sticking with that. That's why I'm using the New Testament within.
No. I quoted that particular saying of Jesus from eyewitness disciples or eyewitnesses around the event. I'm referring to that. Then Paul's writing, and I want to know, why is Paul a reliable source of information? Why you believe he is?
Because if you want just a biography of Paul himself,
I know the biography of Paul. Why do you believe it's true?
Because there's a number of reasons. The first would be he's actually one of two authors that are pre-70 AD Jews that we have in writing, so as far as a Pharisaical perspective. So Paul and Josephus are the two of them. When we actually compare Paul's writings with respect to the Qumran community and, say, Josephus, they share a common theme. And
so what do you mean? What does Josephus say that Paul agrees with?
So when Josephus speaks about the type of school he went to, how he was trained, and just the writing style of Josephus, you can actually see that.
We're not disputing Paul didn't write. This is the problem, you see. We're not disputing that Paul didn't write. Why do you believe what he wrote is reliable?
Because he then makes the argument that when he sees these Christians worshipping this, cursed man on a tree, because he's a zealous Jew.
When who sees what?
When Paul sees people, these Christians, these Nazarenes, worshipping a cursed man on a tree, to him that's blasphemous. And so this is why Galatians, being his authentic letter, and scholars, both Christian and non-Christian, know this, that Galatians is an authentic letter of Paul. He deliberately then, when he has that Damascus Road experience, he then realizes this cursed man on the tree that he thinks is a rebel. I mean, he thinks he's a rebel because he must have blasphemed God. That's why he's killed. He then deliberately changes those.
Just stop at this point, Rob. Where's this information about Paul and his feelings and such? Where are you getting that from?
In Galatians 1-3.
Okay, continue.
Specifically in chapter 3, he says that he became a curse for us. He actually adds those words because he understands then the theological significance of the cross and the resurrection.
But there's lots of issues, Rob, with due respect with what you're saying, because you were asked about witnesses and you went from from the people who Jesus was supposed to have given the sign to. You went straight to Paul, and then you're talking about a pre-Christian community, the Crimean community, and you're pointing at them as I don't know in what way, but maybe as precursors. Now the idea is actually, where is the concept of the theosis in the Old Testament? Because you said it was there. We don't really see God coming and intervening on the earth in the way, in a restitutionary way that you're describing. But actually, even if you look at, you describe the theosis as beautiful, but when I look at it, I see inherent injustice within it, and I'll give you the reasons why. So, for example, we have this concept that God is all loving within Christianity. Often Christians tell us, God is love. They make that fact statement, but then what we see is that when God created Adam and Eve with this faculty of free will, He gave them this free will to be able to make choices between good and evil, which means they actually have the ability, the capability to do both of those two things anyway. Unless you believe that free will wasn't a real free will, or it's just a title given to another faculty, but they weren't meant to do evil things. Mm-hmm. And then He gives them a command to eat from whatever you like, but not of this tree. But they fall for the whatever tree, however you want to put it. They fall for that, and they eat from this tree. At that point, God cuts them off. Woman's destined to, have childbearing pain, etc. Men is to toil on the earth, and they're cut. And there's no real way back to God. That's the fall that you describe. And in that fall, not only are they cut off from God, but actually their very nature is changed. They become unable to be good without. Their nature is fallen nature, and then they're born with a congenital sin that is passed on and on. Now, all these things are not only tyrannical in terms of an application of justice, but actually they're unjust, because I would be held, my child, if a newly born child, would be held accountable, or carry some sin, or carry some guilt for the actions of Adam, however many thousands of years ago. And there's no way to restitute.
I don't hold to original sin.
No, great. I'm glad you don't. I'm just giving you the general picture of Christian. And then to pile insult upon injury, you're given a system of laws to live in, to live with, or according to, which actually condemn you, according to Paul. They're not meant to be a way of salvation, but actually they are themselves highlighting the fact that you are fallen and that you need saving. And then what happens is that there is no way for you to do anything in your own way. Your works are like filthy deeds, filthy rags. Your deeds do not have any impact upon your salvation. And so God Himself has to make this restitution of human beings to Him, back to Him. And the way He does that is it's not forgiveness. He doesn't provide forgiveness. He says that this is the price. The price is a death sacrifice. And no one can give this death sacrifice because it has to be a perfect human being. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down as a perfect human being, and I'm going to kill myself to pay myself. Now, there's a transaction here. To deal with the sin, there's a transaction. A sacrifice is made to God, however you want to put this, but the sacrifice is from God. So this is equivalent of you taking money out of one pocket that you have and then putting it into another pocket that you have. This is almost like a play on words. It's not actually a real sacrifice, in the sense that you have neither gained anything nor lost anything. And then in that act, you're told that not only is the sin paid, but you're also forgiven. Now, that the problem with this, either the sin was forgiven and therefore no longer needed to be paid, or it was paid and then it was not forgiven, because you can't have both at the same time for the same thing. And this is where, for the theosis concept, for me, is not so beautiful. It actually falls down and comes across as unjust, and takes away from God this aspect of being able to forgive and actually be merciful. So for me, the Christian concept of the Creator is a God that cannot forgive sin, i.e. has to have blood. Now, what do you think about how I feel about that?
Yeah, so I actually sympathize with your statement there, because that's actually my complaint with most of Protestant theology, say Reformation Europe forward. Specifically, because notice the trajectory of what you just said. The premise is obviously original sin, and this thing called original sin, which is why you have, in say the Catholic tradition, Immaculate Conception of Mary and all that stuff, right? So, I find it interesting that again, as speaking as a Christian, one who believes in the incarnation and the resurrection and all that, what I find interesting, why that was the reason, is to cause theosis first, and this thing called sin is like a bonus. It's not the primary focus. That's actually like the secondary or even the third focus in God's perspective. So my question back to you would be, what is your concept of sin? Like, is sin some ontological thing that actually has a reality? So like if I don't know, if I'd steal this $5 note, this action of stealing, that word steal, or that motive, right? The chemistry going in my mind, like is sin just an abstract thing that you use to define this action that I'm doing, or is sin an actual property that's causing me to do this action? And
so what is your answer to that question, Rob?
Yeah, so my answer to that question is sin is not something that I can take a ruler and measure it and
we agree 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So we both agree that sin is not an entity.
Yeah.
It is a and I would say it's a transactional thing that's occurred. Simply as if my child disobeys me, there's nothing physical that's created from that disobedience. There is a relational issue now that's going on that needs rectifying. So the question is, how would you deal with your child, for example, if they were to commit something against your will? Is you would teach them, you would love them, you would import upon them the importance of following your guidance and your rules, which is good for their benefit. Don't put your hand in the fire. Don't drink this tea when it's too hot. Don't jump down 4 flights of steps in one. These are guidance.
Why would you be saying that? You see, why would you be saying that to them? Because you're older, you have experience.
No. So I'm just giving you a relational concept. We're not and obviously it comes from the fact that I have a greater wisdom than my child would have in terms of the earth. So in terms of God, this is obviously a much greater thing. But we are talking about God is giving human beings way to live in the world. And then when you disobey from that, there's 2 ways of doing that in Islamic concept. One is something that is directly between me and the Creator. So I don't pray my prayer, or I, do something that has no material impact upon anyone else. In Islam, the concept is you return back to the Creator. You say, this is what I've done. You regret that. You ask for forgiveness. You repent, and God has the ability to forgive you. There's nothing else is required. The other type of sin is that if I were to, smash a window in your house, well, I'm sinning because I'm not following the guidelines of God, which means that I should, be courteous to my neighbors and they have rights over me, etc. Now, what I'm required to do, apart from the sin, the repenting, etc., but I'm also required to make reparations to you. I have to go to you, fix your window, apologize to you, and seek your forgiveness as well. To a certain extent, there may be a point where if you completely refuse to keep forgiving me, then you become the one who is the belligerent one in this scenario. And therefore, as long as I've done my best in that. Now, and in that scenario, God will then, if I've made my best attempt in that, God is able to forgive. Now, the issue here is there's no payments of anything. Sins are being dealt with because they're relational issues. I'm fixing my relationship with you. God is fixing his relationship with us. But there's no ontological thing, this actual thing that we're giving, that has to be somehow paid for and dealt with. There isn't anything like this. Christianity seems to think, and it's not you, I appreciate that, but Christianity seems to think that sin is this thing that came into existence when man and Adam and Eve sinned, and this is somehow in the world now, and this needs to be dealt with. And the only way to deal with this thing is to pour blood on it, apparently. And so this is where, for me, again, it falls down. So if you don't believe sin is a thing, do you believe that God can forgive sin without blood?
Yeah, so I would absolutely love a long discussion on all this, because I can show you ancient Near Eastern concepts and that context behind, say, the Levitical sacred space sort of thing going on there, which is very primitive, and it's completely. I mean, the whole Augustinian original sin thing being retrojected back on Leviticus is actually anachronistic by the Protestant Christians.
So, do you believe there's forgiveness of sin without blood?
Yes.
Okay.
So what this is my question to you. This is the crux of this whole thing is, you just said, Imran, if you do something, okay, I steal this $5 note, but then if I could be getting you wrong here, but if I repent, or if I say sorry, or maybe if I do something to counter it, to balance that out, because I believe in generational sins. Like, if you do a wrong act, even if it's a tiny one, it does have kind of like the butterfly effect. Chaos can result down the track. So I may do something else to try and counter that, and then God has to then forgive me. But you see, that language, God has to, or he has the ability to. My question is, why does he need to? In the Islamic context, because in the Christian context, all God wants to do is cause theosis.
Look, here's the problem. Here's the problem we got bringing Islam into it. Do you think God wanted sin in the world?
No.
All right. So there's our big problem, because we believe Allah says that if people didn't sin, he would create a new creation that would. So God created us to sin.
But what's the rational logic behind that? Why would he?
Because it's the repentance. It's all about repentance. It's all about turning back. It's always recognizing you. Look, we're created weak. We've got an enemy on this earth who's attacking us daily. Yeah. And we're created with this nature, an ability to sin, just as Adam was created with that same nature. There was no perfect nature. He was created the same as us with that ability. And when the temptation came and he succumbed to his nature, which he was created with, no perfect here, nothing ideal status and no low status, same status, created with the ability to sin. Because if Adam was created perfect, he wouldn't be able to sin. But he wasn't created perfect. We know that. So sin is not the issue. We know God says he'll wipe us off the face of the earth and replace us with a creation that did sin. So we know that we're going to sin. So it's not the issue that it is in Christianity. See, we believe as Muslims, you Christians, have invented a solution to a problem that doesn't really exist. That's how we see you guys. And you're jumping through hoops trying to do it. Now, you've just jumped through one less hoop by saying you don't need the blood now. Yeah?
No.
So then you ask a very pertinent question. Why should God forgive us? Why should God forgive us as Muslims? Why should God come and die for you as Christians? I think it's an even bigger question, to be honest. And just going back onto the point, I was reading Galatians, nothing there about Paul being, why are you people worshipping this? Nothing about that whatsoever. And Paul actually goes against the teachings of the disciples here, where he says everyone is cursed trying to live by the law. Everyone is cursed. Everyone, meaning Jews.
That's the passage I was referring to, and he speaks about the gospel to Abraham.
No, but what's he saying there? He's basically telling Jews the law finished, the law's finished. Yet the disciples of Jesus were not doing that. So this particular letter exposes Paul as being in opposition to the disciples. And even when he starts his letter in Galatians 1, we've done this on our Bible streams. What does he say? I am astonished you are so quickly deserting the one who called you to live in the grace of Christ and turn into a different gospel. So they're already following something different. And we can see this drives the wedge between the disciples and Paul. And we can see why what happens in Acts to Paul, and he has to take the Nazirite vow, is because he's doing exactly what he's accused of by saying that you're not justified under the law no more. Jesus didn't teach that. Yeah? So I don't know why he brought Galatians to the table as if it was going to demonstrate something. You said that this was evidence of Paul asking people, why are you worshiping this rebel on a stick? There's nowhere does Paul say that in Galatians. Where did you get that from?
The flow of Galatians reveals that, so Galatians 1, he speaks about, he has this encounter with this figure that he thinks is God himself, but suddenly it's Jesus. Then he goes and meets with Peter and James for 15 days at the end of Galatians 1. Then Galatians 2, he continues on chronologically, a couple of years pass. Then Galatians 3, he gives his theological argument that as a Jew, I knew that anyone who was hung on a tree was cursed. But then he deliberately changes the wording that, he became a curse for us.
Why did he become a curse for us?
So then it's connected back to this discussion that Imran and
the thing in Galatians.
Sorry, Imran, just one reading. Because Paul's trying to teach that everyone trying to live by the law is under a curse, because no one can live under the law.
Well, and so why does he say that he became a curse for us?
Because he's saying, because no one can live under the law, the only way you can be redeemed is to believe that Jesus died for you and took on that curse.
So, and then what's the mechanisms of why that supersedes the law, the observance of the law in Paul's thinking?
What do you mean? Oh, you mean because he was put on a pole or a cross or on a tree?
Yeah, but he's saying again, we're talking about the mechanism here, the mechanics of why that works, rather than just observing the law.
Because Paul said no one can live under the law. Paul says everyone is. Paul says, according to the scripture, anyone who doesn't live under the law is cursed.
Why?
Yeah, that's because they can't. Because that's he doesn't say why.
So Paul believes that the law itself is something that condemns you. It's not something that actually can save you. He believes it's something that is a demonstration of your fallen nature. You're given this law, and there's no way in hell you can keep it, which is actually not the understanding in the Old Testament. And what you're taught is that what Paul teaches is that the only way is if God saves you. And in fact, in some places, he gives the idea, which is where the Calvinists get their view that this is completely in God's hand, because he talks about before the creation of the world, you were chosen. And I can't remember which letter that is, but it refers to the concept that your salvation is already predestined for you. Now, the problem with this sort of concept is that the idea that God, because he refers back to the Old Testament, Jesus becoming a curse for us. But actually, that's not what the Old Testament says. So if you read that passage, and I don't remember the passage from the top of my head.
Yeah,
what it says is that God curses the one hung on the tree. So
sure, that's what I'm saying.
Now you have a question here. Who is cursing the individual that's hung on the tree?
Mm-hmm.
God Himself. But God is used. So now this is again an internal contradiction. Why would your method of salvation be something that you would yourself curse?
So go back to Genesis 3. This notion of cursing the ground. So now there's no I believe that Adam and Eve were not immortal and I don't believe they were ubermenches or supermen.
Yeah.
Before the fall, they were just natural, just like you and me. If they cut themselves, they would bleed.
Because in the last verse of Genesis 3, it talks about putting some sort of angel or cherubim in front of the tree of life with a flaming sword. So if they were immortal, there would be no need for them to be the angel to be protecting the tree of life to start.
So you see, but that's evidence for divine counsel, ancient Near Eastern divine.
So I think that's sure. I think that's a side point, but sure. But what it comes down to is the mechanism of the salvation that you're saying is beautiful. It's still a requirement for payment.
So the curse language then is again in regards to this chaos Kampf. It's chaos Kampf is a German word to mean struggle with chaos, where Genesis 1 starts with the chaotic waters. It's dark, it's unkept, it's formless. Now Hamza was saying if God starts perfect, if he starts with a perfect creation, he'll wipe it away. But philosophically, and this is
that's not.
I didn't say that. I said if this creation didn't sin.
Well, that's part of perfection.
No, it's not. So are you saying that when God created Adam and Eve, He made them perfect, unable to sin?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay. No. So did God make? So in your concept, did God make a perfect world?
No.
Okay. So we agree.
What I'm saying is it's impossible for Him to do that.
Why?
Because by definition He's perfect. So Leibniz, the mathematician, actually also reaffirmed this perspective that if you talk about ontologies, so God, He's the all-powerful, He's the omni attributes. If He creates another perfect thing, notice that's a contradiction. You can't.
Yeah, so we're confusing perfect. Yeah, we're confusing perfect. We're not talking about perfect as God is perfect, because God is absolute. And human beings are not absolute in any sense of the word. So when we're talking about perfect, we're talking about morally perfect.
We believe angels are perfect.
I'm not talking about just humans. I'm talking about literally the fabric of the cosmos.
No, but we believe angels are perfect.
But we're making it human beings, Rob. Otherwise, we're going to be talking abstractness for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, we believe angels are perfect.
On that note, Abbas, I think.
No, even like in Job, it says he commits.
No, we believe. Not you believe. We believe angels are perfect. Meaning they can't disobey God. See, sin is just disobeying God. Nothing more, nothing less. Disobedience to God.
How can they not disobey God?
They can't. They don't have free will.
They don't have free will.
So what then? How did they worship God if they don't have free will?
So they worship God. So this is inherently within them. Now, the reason why a human being can be a even more of an amazing creation than the angels is that we can choose to worship God. So it's like someone forcing someone to love you and someone choosing to love you. These two things are entirely different. And so the reason that human beings are given free will is when we choose to be obedient to God and worship God, that's a higher level of worship than having a mechanistic thing that has no other choice. It's programmed to do that. So this is why there's a difference between, so we have this concept of, if you like, animalistic existence, human existence, and then angelic existence. If we just follow our desires as human beings, then we essentially like animals. We just do
worse than animals.
Worse than animals, because at least they're doing what they're meant to do.
No, I would say we're better than animals, but we're still animals. Yeah.
We're worse than animals. Look, think of what animals do.
Not really, no.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because think of what animals do, and they do it because that's their nature. And then think of a human being choosing to do that same thing. That's worse, because they don't have to do it. An animal has to do its low, debased thing it's doing. A human being doesn't. Therefore, if a human being chooses to do that,
with respect to evolution, yeah. So
if a human being chooses to act like an animal and do and imitate its behavior, then it's worse than the animal. But I'm not going to lay off the hook of this Galatians, because you keep trying to pin me on why this curse. It isn't explained in the verse, mate. It isn't explained in the letter. Why? It's very, very simple. It says that according to the Old Testament, and the verse I think is in Deuteronomy 26:27, it says that those who do not live according to the law are cursed. Then Paul makes the case, no one can do that, therefore you're all cursed. But if you believe Jesus died for you, that curse is put upon him. That's it. You're asking me to answer questions which are not even in the text, not in the letter, not in the Old Testament where it gives me the references in the passage. So I don't understand where you're getting your information from that letter.
Well, Rob, I think what we should do, Rob, it's lovely talking to you.
He needs the perfect storm all by himself.
That's Rob, right. We need to bring you on for us.
Can do actually. Rob can call, come on to the stream maybe on Sunday. But Rob, one thing I would just like to say to you is this. When I asked you why you wouldn't accept Islam, you mentioned something about beauty and something being beautiful. And this concept of God coming down, being sacrificed for human beings, for his creation, was something very beautiful to you. And what I would suggest to you that Islam offers something far more beautiful than that concept. And that concept is that Allah says that even if your sins were to stretch from the earth to the heavens, and you turn to me with sincerity and ask me to forgive you, I shall forgive you. Now, to me, that is the ultimate beauty, because God is not taking a price. Nobody has to die. God himself does not need to come down to earth. He does not need to be stripped naked and lashed until his flesh is apparently hanging off his bones and then strung up to a cross or a tree or whatever and be killed in order for us to be forgiven. Now, I don't know how you can say that seems more beautiful than the creator of the heavens and the earth saying that even if your sins stretch from the earth to the heavens and you turn to me with sincerity, I shall forgive you. And Allah says more. Allah says, and if you turn to the sin straight after that, and then you turn to me again with sincerity, I shall forgive you. Now, to me, that's the ultimate beauty. So now I ask you the question again before you go, or maybe perhaps you should think about it when you go. That's far more beautiful, I think, than what you've described, quite frankly. But it's a pleasure to have you on, Rob. I'm really sorry.
Can I give a quick 1 minute?
Quite a long time.
Can I give a quick 1 minute?
Sure.
1 minute. 1 minute.
We'll end it at that and we'll answer once you've left.
And by the way, Imran, you seem very well read, and I would happily have a one-on-one if you want sometime.
No problem. Make contact on the EFDawah email and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My speaking here more as a scientist in this context, we are all stardust, through Big Bang moving forward, supernova events, the periodic table elements, we're all stardust. And then the Christian message of the hypostasis of the Logos, the divine, which is God, and he incarnates and joins his nature to cause theosis. So I see the body of Jesus, as you were describing, as being lashed and so on, as not God, but the stardust by which God then joins himself to the entire cosmos in that incarnation to then glorify it, and hence Resurrection Sunday. And to me, that's what I find really beautiful.
Rob, brother, but with all due
I thought you could be more confused.
With all due respect, Rob. I mean, with all due respect.
No, I think we were going to let him go.
Let go.
Thank you very much for that.
I mean, with all due respect, if you make make something into a beautiful story because you find it beautiful, I mean, that's not a religion from God. That's you trying to make things.
I thought David Bowie soundtrack was going to come on at the same time.
No, he was very nice, actually.
We've got to let Hassan on. We have to let Hassan on.
Let Brother Hassan on for a second.
Brother Hassan, last time you were, I think, on very, very late because you were at work. I presume you're in the sort of medical field or something, because doctors and nurses and these stuff.
From the background, you can tell, can't you? You can tell.
Do you remember his last question?
Yeah, I missed a few. I missed the first hour and a half because I was at work today, so that's why. Joining a bit late, and I was just going to say, you asked for opinions. I was just going to say that I think you can actually have a perfectly good moral system without a religion at all. That's what I think. You can have secular morality could be very successful with good outcomes.
What mechanism would you use to arrive at that conclusion? What's the mechanism?
I look at sure. Well, I think to have that discussion, you need to have you need to agree on the outcome. So for me, the outcome would be well-being. So I would say you can look at an act, and then you can evaluate the act by determining whether it increases well-being or not. And that's one aspect.
Well-being for who? Well-being for who?
Overall well-being. So, say two people helping each other out, that would increase overall well-being, and that's something. But
didn't Sabor mash you on this idea that for example, what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs is good for the well-being of the majority of Chinese people?
No, he didn't mash me on it. He basically gave me lots.
No. He mashed you on
questions. It. No, right. Well, he didn't give me a chance to respond because he switched his camera off and stuff. But anyway, so
that's why I asked a very specific question: well-being of who?
Sure. I'd say overall well-being. So you can have
overall. What does that even mean? Well-being of who?
I'm trying to explain it to you. So it's overall well-being would be for the greatest number of people. Taking into account everyone's human rights. That's all. So that's what I would think. So you'd have.
Right. So going back to Sabor, his example was China, who are the majority, and the Chinese are the majority in that situation. So the well-being of the many, at the sacrifice of the few, the Uyghurs, according to your standards, not a problem.
No, it's not. I didn't say. Well, I know. No, I'm saying it is a problem because it's impinging on the human rights of the Uyghurs, who are the minority here. So, and you can look at you can look at it the other way. So,
but the Chinese are thinking they're protecting their citizens, they're protecting their land, they're protecting their heritage, and they think that this is basically corrupting what the majority believe. And effectively, they see it as a kind of cancer within their country, and they see it as cutting out the tumor. Now, according to what you're saying about well-being, the Chinese should be within their rights because they're thinking of the well-being of the majority and of the greater good according to their morality.
Well, but then that impinges on the human rights of the Uyghurs, which is of a greater concern. So,
more greater than the majority of Chinese.
Yes, because that's.
So what happened to the benefit of the many?
Well, as long as it doesn't impinge on the human rights of the individual, so you wouldn't have 100 people.
You didn't say that though,
because that was I know, but I did. I did, and that's what I'm trying to say. So
I asked you who's the beneficiary.
So if you have,
you said that the many. You used the term.
No, I did, but I said the well-being of the many, but as long as it's not impinging on the human rights. So if you okay, so if
Human
you had
rights. What human
Islamic
rights? Where are
country-
these from?
Sorry?
Who's human? The Chinese have their own set of human rights, their own subjective morality.
Yeah, and everyone's got their own subjective morality. So that's the
So
same,
according
that's
to you,
the
you
same-
can't say the Chinese are wrong, then, can you?
Well, I can say, because I can say that it impedes upon overall well-being and the.
Yeah, but that's
human rights
your
of the Uyghurs.
morality, not their morality.
Yeah, that's my morality, and they can disagree in the same way that somebody
Right.
could.
So you
could
can't say they're
something
morally
and everyone
wrong.
else can
You
disagree.
can't say they're morally wrong because they're using a different standard to you.
I can say they're morally wrong according to my
Actually,
standard.
they're using the same standard as you
Why?
because they're protecting their citizens, their heritage, their country, and they're doing this, and they feel that this small, insignificant portion of people are a danger to the majority. Therefore, within your moral framework, they're benefiting the many, the well-being of the many.
It's not within my moral framework because they'll be impinging on the human rights of the Uyghurs, which is what I've been trying to say. So I can say it another way. If you imagine that, if you had a Muslim majority country, would you allow an active atheist community?
Where's human rights? What human rights are you referring to?
I'd say the human rights of the of an individual or a group to live in
Who
peace.
set these rights? Whose standard?
Well, I mean, there was a Universal Declaration of Human Rights which standardised these, but these people have individual rights and morality that are, we have a sense of morality that's been involved, and so there are laws and set in place and to enshrine those.
Are the Chinese signed up to this?
No, not every country has, but people can have their. As I said, it is all subjective. Huh?
So I'm going to leave you alone in a minute, 1 second, because I know the doctor wants to speak to you. So according to what you're saying is everyone has the right to create their own subjective moral values based upon their own social conditioning and their own environment.
I'm saying everyone has their own subjective morality, but
I wouldn't disagree with you.
The way society has to be organised, because you can't allow everybody to live by their own subjective moral rights. So if you go back to my question, I just want to ask you.
What about objective morality?
I'm just going to ask you. So, if you had a Muslim majority country, would you allow an active atheist community? Should they be allowed to exist in a Muslim country?
So historically, atheists have existed in Muslim countries, and they've even had open air debates in Baghdad, for example. There were famous cases of atheists publishing their text within Muslim lands, and this was being distributed. So the idea that
and free from persecution as well.
So obviously the people that were living there were not being persecuted, otherwise they wouldn't be publishing their books or having these open air debates. So it's interesting because we don't really see atheists sort of feel that there's something special about them, and really we don't really see it that way.
No.
What I would say is, so I think it's not really it's interesting. Let's go back to the original thing that you were presenting. So I think we've had this similar example and discussion before as well, if I'm not remembering incorrectly.
We had it with Sabur.
I'm not surprised. It's a really good example. So because you see, with the problem with this sort of well-being concept, and also with the idea that and I agree with you, we do have an inherent idea of what's right and wrong. The question is where does this stem from, and that's where we would differ. You say it's evolutionary, I say it comes from something which we call the fitra. Now, the problem is when you're applying this societal agreement on whatever is right and wrong, because this is what the Human Rights Declaration essentially is, because it contains things that can't be empirically proven. For example, all human beings are equal, for example. There's no empirical way of establishing this fact. We vary widely: height, weight, temperament, IQ, whatever that might be. So this is something that has been inherited from our religious history and backgrounds that have been brought into secularism, and we apply it as a law because it appeals to our inherent sense of justice. Now, when we have
an inherent sense of morality, yes.
Sure, I agree. We don't disagree with that. Now, the problem here is that when you're making these assertions that we should apply this sense of well-being to our societies, that's not really the problem. The problem is how and when. So, for example, in the Chinese example, we have a society that's decided that these minority that are amongst them are a danger to that society, and therefore they will curtail their human rights, and they will punish them for that. So that's killing them, whatever they're doing to them, terrible things. We know 3 million people potentially there. And this is the same as, and if you scale that example down, of a murderer within your society who you apprehend and then you trial, and then you're going to execute them or imprison them for life, or whichever one you may feel is worse. What for you? Because we're both of these individuals and this community, 3 million people are in concentration camps. Both of them are having their human rights trampled upon in some way or other, from their perspective.
Sure.
And you could argue from even a societal perspective, you could say, yes, this is a trampling of the human rights, but they would justify that according to utility, i.e., where there's a greater good within this, so these people, we can justify their suffering. This is similar to what the Nazis did. This is similar to what's happening in China, and it's similar for this individual who's being murdered. Now, I presume you would agree with the punishment for the murderer. I'm assuming that. I could be wrong. But you're disagreeing with
some form of punishment, yes.
Sure. But you're disagreeing with the punishment for the larger group based upon the even larger society who's agreed it. My question is, why, on what basis are you making that differentiation?
Okay, well, I'll make the differentiation on whether there is any actual evidence of harm. So, you talk about that group, whether they have been, so it'd be immoral if they've been misrepresented, if there's been propaganda that's made out that they are plotting to become an insurrection that overthrows the state and kill innocent people. And if that's the propaganda that's coming out, then of course that would be immoral. Now, if you had a group of people who genuinely are plotting to overthrow the state and kill lots of innocent people, then suppression of those people would be morally justified. So the issue is a case whether there's actually any real harm. Now, you talk about the murderer.
I want to just pick you up
on that. You just justified Hitler.
Yeah, I know. So I want to pick you up on that, if that's okay.
Just justified Hitler and his actions.
So the courts that are making these decisions, i.e. the law of the land, in China have agreed that this is the steps that they're being taken. Now, the establishment of the evidence and the standard of evidence it will be different amongst the societies. Now, this is the problem with the utilitarian argument, is that if it's convenient, you can change the standard of how you would treat somebody. So in that society, their laws and their courts have decided that these people are a sufficient threat. Whatever evidence they have or don't have, they've agreed that this is sufficient for them to justify this course of action, and they're taking this out. Now, the argument being made here is not that we agree that this is right, because I agree that you think this is wrong, and I agree that I think this is wrong. But the basis for the argument that you're presenting, you don't have a reason that you can give for that reason to be wrong. I.e., that society agrees. Their courts have received what they feel is sufficient evidence. They're carrying out something that they feel is a threat to themselves. They're trying to eliminate that threat. So they are justifying themselves on utilitarian grounds of well-being for the greater number of people, just as you are doing. Now, there's a problem here now. The problem here is now, how are you going to differentiate between this subjective morality and being in a position to say, actually, even if this society has justified this according to this way, it's wrong. How are you going to justify that for yourself as someone who doesn't believe in and the reason, this is why Muslims or theists say that they have a something that grounds their morality that's outside of human experience, something transcendental.
Sure.
And because it's transcendental, even if all of the world were to say, yep, killing these people is fine, I can say, nope, it's always wrong. I can say that because I'm not referring to something that's either societal or evolutionary. I'm referring to something that's beyond human experience. And this is where the morality argument comes in. So the question for you is, how do you differentiate and justify the killing of, say, the murderer and the killing of, say, 3 million people, if both societies agree that there's sufficient legal and, for their example, for their ideas, moral imperative for this to be carried out? How would you differentiate that?
Okay. Well, I mean, certainly my opinion is that the killing of both would be wrong. Whatever, because I'd be against the killing, but I would be for the. I would be for the.
Sure, make it indefinite,
the prison term.
sort of imprisonment. for both of them.
Yeah, so for the imprisonment. Sure. But even if it was proved, I mean, even if it was absolutely the case that you had a population group who are, who are everything the Uyghurs are accused of doing, I still would be against this, the concentration camps. There may be case for education, integration, these types of things.
Well, that's what we're doing.
But I would be totally against those. So even if that was true, and in fact, the way to get about it is to make sure that there's no false propaganda, so that people, in all cases, understand the truth of these accused populations. And also, you're talking about, I could bring up the issue because I tried to raise with Sabor before he ran off, but you talk about the blasphemy laws of Pakistan, where you have one person who may say something on Facebook and then gets a death sentence and a
Hassan, how many people have been
hanged.
Sorry, Hassan, how many people have been executed in Pakistan for blasphemy?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that it goes on.
It's important. It's important.
Sentences.
I can tell you the answer. I can tell you the answer now.
Go on.
Pakistan has been in existence for 70 odd years. Yeah, zero. Sure. There have been no one has been executed by the courts for blasphemy in Pakistan. There have been cases where people have been imprisoned, they have been released. There have been cases of vigilantes killing people on the streets, which is a different thing entirely than the law itself.
Sure.
So these are sorts of things that they sound really, and I would also be against the killing of somebody arbitrarily without the law being involved. I think this is completely wrong. Vigilantism is anti-Islamic. Sure. But the problem here is that we're jumping sort of the gun here. You can't point to, unless you can justify your own moral compass and standard, you can't be pointing your finger at anybody else to say that you're wrong. The reason is because imagine you've got a ruler, this is your ruler, but your ruler's doing this. So when you try and measure anything, it's always changing.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying to you is you need something that's fixed, and this is where the transcendental comes in. It has to be solid, so it doesn't change when you're measuring things, because then you have an objective measure. Yeah. Subjective measures almost automatically means that you can justify anything if the right circumstances arise.
Precisely.
They arose in Germany, and now they've arisen in China.
Okay, can I just respond to that point? Because I know there was the EFDawah talk on Sunday that unfortunately I was at work with, so I couldn't join in. There was a few things that, and you mentioned it just now. You talked about being grounded. Well, I mean, firstly, you talk about a transcendental being. Well, first you need to prove that transcendental being.
Of course, yeah.
Then you need to prove that transcendental being has a morality, and then you need to prove that morality is greater than what humans can come up with.
No, we don't. Isan, we don't have to prove nothing to you. We can demonstrate why we believe such things, but we don't have to prove nothing.
Yeah, you can. And it's
right. So we don't have to
opinion because I won't share it.
We don't have to prove nothing, just as you don't have to prove anything. Let's establish that.
Yeah, that's it. That'll be your subjective opinion because I don't agree. So
this is the thing.
That's the problem. And going back to your Pakistan flex. So you think it's wrong for people to be in prison for blasphemy?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Why?
Because I think people should be able to criticize other people's beliefs.
Right, but if the law of Pakistan is no, this is illegal, and someone breaks the law, do you think people should break the law with impunity?
No, I don't think they do. But I'm saying that's my personal.
Well, if there's a law that says you can't do such and such a thing, if there's a law that says you can't do such and such a thing, and you do that thing, and you get arrested for that thing and in prison for that thing, who's to blame here?
I hope you understand. I appreciate you making this point.
That's my subjective
opinion. I just want to highlight what Hamza's saying. He's saying because the society has agreed this standard.
Yeah.
Who are you to object to that standard?
Exactly. And the standard they've set is your standard. That's the irony. That's
what I'm saying. So
this society is using your standard of morality, and you're standing here telling them they're wrong. And we're just trying to understand that justification.
If you just let me speak, I'm just trying to say. I can still say it's wrong because I can still have my opinion that it's wrong, even if it's the law of the land.
Why is it wrong?
In the same way, in the same way that when cannabis was illegal, somebody can just say that I don't think cannabis should be illegal, but they can have their opinion, they can have a subjective opinion, and it can still be against the law of the land. And going back to Hamza Imran, you mentioned something about talk about things change, and there's something wrong with secular morality changing. Sometimes when you have new information, then the morality can change. So the way I see it is if you have to get water from two wells, okay, so you're trying to give water to people. There are two wells. You don't know the difference between them, so you give water to people from both wells. So there's nothing immoral about that. And then you find out there's a parasite that's in one of the wells, but not the other one. And then you carry on giving people water from both wells. Then that's immoral because there's a parasite in one of the wells. So this is an example of how morality changes once you have more information.
Sure. So can I just respond to that directly, because that's an interesting point. Because what you're doing is you're caricaturing Islamic jurisprudence. And let me just start. So the Western idea of constitutional law and case law, which inform each other. So if you get enough build-up of cases, then the constitutional law can change within a framework, is based upon Islamic jurisprudence from the past. So Islamic jurisprudence existed and predated the Western systems. Now, in Islam, what we do is we have a framework to which the law is applied. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, given that there's a creator, and I know you don't agree with this, but given that there's a creator, given that we believe there's revelation from them, given that we've established what this revelation is, we use this is used as a framework with which to apply, because within this revelation, there are guidelines on how to live in the world. They're not exhaustive, they're limited, and usually they're the ones that are probably the most punitive, because they're the ones that have the highest level standard of evidence required for them. So we're given a framework, and this framework is based upon all the things that are required for human beings, as understood by what Muslims believe human beings are, to live well in the world. So emotionally, as a society, morally, and spiritually as well. So all of these things are sort of covered. Now, what happens is that depending on the scenario that you're presented with, the judge, whoever is that judge, will look at the scenario, and they can amend or adjust the rules as long as they're within the framework to apply to that individual. So, for example, even to the level, if you had someone who came to you and they're diabetic, and their diabetes is so out of control that they're at risk of maybe even amputations unless they get this thing sorted out soon. What the judge can do, he can look at this scenario and say, actually, for you as an individual, consuming excess sugar or sugar beyond a certain level would be disallowed, haram even, possibly. They could come to that conclusion. Now, is sugar haram? No, it's not. But what they're doing is within the framework that the law allows you. What are they applying? The ayah from the Quran, do not harm yourselves. They're applying this, and they're using this in the context of saying this is why this isn't something for you as an individual applicable. What a systemic example of this is during the time of Umar, there were droughts. There was a time of famine. And what happened was that the laws that were there for preventing stealing, some of the harsher laws, and even some of them were less harsh laws, were withheld. So these laws no longer apply for this X length of time until the famine was over. So because the society had changed to a state where people may resort to stealing to survive. So what's happened?
I agree that this is
sure. So we don't have this idea of the rule that doesn't change. Now, what doesn't change is the framework, and the holding and taking this thing. So no one could go outside of the framework. So you could never say, "Look, just kill this person. Let's get it over and done with." Even though it isn't, we don't have the. You could not go outside the framework to do that.
Yeah. So there's a situational aspect, which is I was going to bring up, but you've explained it really well anyway. So.
Sure.
Obviously, if you see somebody stealing, and you think there's something wrong, but if you found out that person was on the verge of starvation, they were stealing food, then it's more moral.
This is Islamic framework anyway. But just so I understand, because you came on with this subjective morality based upon the well-being of the many, are you still standing by that?
Yes. I still think anything that increases
well-being of the many, yeah.
I think it's on. You're not
just going back to my earlier example that I did mention. So, 1 second, Abbas. I'll let you come in, man. Sorry. So, in Hitler's Germany, Hitler convinced the people that the Jews were their enemy, that they were a threat to their economy after the First World War. They were a bankrupt nation. The Jews were all the bankers. And it didn't help that the newspaper said that the Jews were going to bankrupt Germany. They declared war, economic war on Germany. And Hitler justified what he did to the Jews based upon convincing the people, these people are a threat to us based on your morality, for the good of everyone, for the good of the majority. We need to exterminate these people. This is the morality you're putting forward.
No, it's not. I've already explained that earlier, which was about.
No, you didn't.
I did. Well, I did.
You didn't. You just said you would object. No, you just said you would object to their laws. You just said you would object to their laws. They've justified it. They said these people have declared war on us economically, and they're a threat to to the German people. Yeah, and the propaganda went out there. But this is your morality. This is your standard. This is your premise.
It's not. I explained already that the propaganda can be wrong. People could be misinformed. And there's the human rights of the individual. There's the human rights of
people reading propaganda. You think the German people reading the propaganda had a position to say whether this is right or wrong? When the news is blaring out, it's in the newspaper, the kids are being taught it in school, it's permeating throughout the whole of society. The cartoons with the Jews with the big noses and all this. How are you going to challenge it? And then you have then you have the newspaper saying the Jews have declared economic war on Germany. Yeah, to protect the many from the few, according to your principle. Yeah, it's all good. According to your principle.
No, it's not. I never said that. I already explained it. I explained it with.
You explained it very, very badly.
No,
and you explained it with a double standard that forced you to fabricate death for blasphemy in Pakistan. Force you to go to that. It's just a nonsense. Go on, Abbas.
Okay, well, you can think that, but
I just want to say before Abbas finishes off, I just wanted to say one thing because he's muted. I just want to say one. Thing. I can see that you're working really hard. Make sure you get some rest and stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you. And same to you.
Oh yeah, stay safe, fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
So, Hassan, when we first started, I asked you the question about your mechanism. And by that, I wasn't actually inferring your personal mechanism, because your personal mechanism is not what governs society. That's just you saying something what you feel is the right way to be. Now, I would agree with much of what you've said in your sentiment about there being good and not causing harm, etc., etc. But to remain consistent within your worldview, it would have to be social consensus. In other words, if society as a whole agree to something, then that is effectively morally correct for them or right for them to do so. Now, it might not be morally correct from your opinion, but as I said to you, that's not how society is run. So we have to live in
subjective.
We have to live within.
Society has to organize itself according to people's according to people's morality, such that to minimize harm.
Right. So your perception of minimizing harm is a subjective analysis based upon the events that are unfolding. And that's my point. And that's my point. So when Dick Cheney, for example, said to Trevor McDonald, it is irrelevant as to why we went into Iraq, it was in the American interest. In other words, it was beneficial to us to do so. Now, most of us would obviously sensibly argue that that's still immoral and it's bad and that shouldn't happen. But the fact that he could make that statement and in reality, according to your worldview, justify that statement. Just like, for example, now they're talking about bombing Iran, because apparently it will save many more lives by doing so, by killing millions of Iranians. Now, the point here, Hassan, is this.
Sorry.
The point here is, when I said to you about the mechanism, you're just giving me your idea of what the mechanism should be. But in reality, society may see it very differently. So society may actually see it beneficial to go and kill millions of Iranians because of this so-called threat that they might pose or they might not pose. How do you govern that? And the way that you govern that is that you have, as Imran said, a ruler that doesn't change. and it's already set in stone that you can't preemptively go and just slaughter and kill people. It is haram, it is forbidden, and in the sight of God, you will be punished. You will not even smell the fragrance of paradise. Now, the thing is, you're living in this idealistic type of scenario where, because you're an educated man, and because you've perhaps thought about these things very deeply, your sense of morality, my friend, may be very different from how societies govern their sense of morality. And the reality here is this: according to your worldview, just as Imran and just as Hamza has alluded to, you can't say with a certainty, with an absolute, what they're doing is wrong. All you can do is say, to me, it feels bad. To me, it feels wrong. And then you have to accept that that very feeling is a construct of nurture and nature. And much of it actually will be nurture rather than nature, because if you were born in Israel, or you were born in America, or you were born in Africa, your sense of morality might have been very different. And you may have actually justified many things that you find abhorrent today. And this is where that ruler comes in, where it doesn't matter where you're born. It doesn't matter about your level of education. It doesn't matter about your social circumstances. Allah has ordained certain practices to be haram, to be forbidden for mankind. And this is why, where Allah says in the Quran, without guidance, you are at loss. It describes the person who is in darkness, where when they stretch out their hand, they cannot even see their hand. In other words, they're just grappling for things in the dark. And this is, in fact, Ehsan, what we're seeing in society today, because we see the most abhorrent acts being done by governments, and they are justifying it because of the greater good. And in your worldview, all you can say is, it doesn't feel right to me. But you can't say
I can say it's wrong.
Can't say
you can talk about it in another way. I mean, you've got your moral standard, which is your religion, but then of course you can have people who follow a different religion, and according to their religion there could be a different morality. So then appealing to your God hasn't actually solved the issue, because then you've got two different religions, two different moral frameworks. Yeah, so then you want to try and find
a balance between. That position.
That's a red herring. I'll tell you why that's a red herring.
We should talk about the multiple religions and the
I'll tell you why that's a red herring, Ehsan, because you could point to a cult or a religion that believes, for example, in cannibalism. And then you can say, well, look, there's another religion there that believes in cannibalism, and I think we'll all agree that was awful. So basically, you've got no grounds. And that's a ridiculous argument, quite frankly. Because first of all, you're talking to Muslims, and we're telling
as Muslims, you can all agree common framework.
We're telling you that we get our morality from our religion, which we believe, and we have reasons to believe, that has come from God, right? What you're telling me is that there are some very bad people out there that do some very horrible things. Therefore, it's all rubbish. Therefore, it's all got to be wrong.
What he's saying. What he's saying is other religions have a different set of morality, if you like, standards. But we take them down just as much as we take you down, so don't worry about that. If we come up against Christians who have an opposing set of moral standard or guidance or whatever it may be, we'll challenge it just as we challenge you. You've got nothing. You just got feelings, which is what it is. We know you came on saying I can have subjective morality and I can feel based upon my own personal feelings and subjective experience what I think is right and is wrong, and no one's disputing that fact. But what you can't have is objective morality, which is what we are disputing.
Well, you don't have objective morality anyway.
It's been a pleasure, mate.
You've got absolute morality, which is different.
No, you can't. You can't have objective morality that measure everyone else's morality.
Don't have objective morality.
Yes, we do. We have a transcendental
morality.
Ehsan, it would be really good if you came on again. We'd come on a bit earlier. I know you're probably busy. But what I'd really like to find out, actually, is a little bit about you. What led you out of the religion and stuff like that. I'd probably like to get to know you a bit better. So we have an email address. If you'd like to correspond, please feel free to make use of it. But if you're coming on, let us know when you're on, because we'll try and bring you on earlier, because we do have some interesting discussions. And
I'll try. I've got
wish you all the best. Okay, you take care.
And I think that's yeah. All I wanted to say to Hassan is that apologies if he thought we were being a bit abrupt, but I think the reality here is that there is a cognitive dissonance, a dishonesty, really, by people. Because look, there have been people who've been very honest, and they've said, look, atheism, to believe in no creator, leads to nihilism. It's the logical, rational step. Okay, it leads to effectively everyone is just a product of a primeval soup, a gathering of molecules, a gathering of atoms. And in reality, it doesn't matter what you feel. It doesn't matter what you think, because, you know, we just matter. And if we just matter, nothing matters.
Yeah, was that intended
Right?
ban?
Yeah,
But I was going to say, did he really come on to tell us that he can make his own moral compass for himself?
I don't know.
I don't think anyone here has ever objected or challenged or the idea that someone can't have their own morality. I find it bizarre. Honestly, I found it bizarre.
I mean, you know, the thing is, like, for example, supposing you've got a road sweeper and, you know, he's got 2 good kidneys and he's got a good heart. And then there's a scientist who's doing lots of drug discoveries and he's going to cure cancer. I mean, under his worldview, even though he might argue that no, they mustn't cause any harm, the reality is it doesn't matter what action you do, there's going to be some harm to somebody, right? So would it be okay to say, well, he's only a road sweeper, we take his kidneys and his heart, we'll give it to the guy that needs it, he's going to cure cancer, he's going to save millions of people. Now, from a purely materialistic basis, it would make perfectly logical, rational sense to do that. It would only be an emotional concept that you would have to engage to argue against it. But you couldn't argue that that was the sensible thing to do. But in Islam, you can't do that. You can't take somebody's life. He has equal right to the one who has who is a scientist, basically.
SubhanAllah. All right, let's end the storm. Okay, guys, storm's over. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for your time.
Assalamu alaikum.